my whole career, I've had a great career in supposedly high quality dining. I'm cooking the best food of my career is happening at the farm right now.
The farm right now.
That nobody's getting. Nobody's paying for it. My chickens.
Yeah.
With, mushrooms from the forest, and let's say my small asparagus patch, plus my onions, plus my last year's little butter braised radishes, whatever. Yeah. Dude, it's
Huckleberry turnips.
Lights out. It's like sometimes I cook a meal and I'll be like, $450. This is what I would charge to eat this, because it's so impossible. I enjoy thoroughly, watching the sunrise from my bedroom. I see the sunrise over Jay Peak, from my pillow. I also like having coffee alone by myself. I like lighting the fire by myself so my family's warm when they come downstairs. I love putting on my rubber boots. I love letting the chickens out of the coop.
You're explaining my morning and my life.
Yeah. I want wine that comes from a magical garden, and that, that was grown by a family of which I admire their values and way of handling themselves, right? I don't really want to drink wine from a cigar smoking Lamborghini driver, Not to be, but that's all cool if that's what you want. All the power to you, but I'm just saying, I want to drink small farm wine. Yeah, I'll make a nice dinner.
Yeah.
Meat and potatoes and vegetables, good salad.
Everything you want.
Yeah, some fruit, but then no eating after 7, and no eating during the day.
After 7.
I eat at 5.
You eat at 5?
Yeah.
Why? I eat early too. Well, usually.
You know why? It's funny. It's for the restaurant business.
Because you have staff meal.
4:30 I would eat staff meal.
Yeah,
and still to this day, I'm like, 7:30? Reservation at 7:30. Even when I come here, it's not because I have a baby. I'm like always the first guy here when I come here.
It's funny to make your life in the restaurant biz and then serve people late dinners, but then yourself only think like, that's crazy.
People want to eat at 11. I was like, what? 11?
Yeah, that's kind of late.
That's like super bedtime.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
How are you going to sleep tonight? I see people eating like, hard to digest things like rabbit or like lamb,
That's hard to digest, lamb?
Yeah. For some people it is. We know that in the restaurant business there, like sometimes you'll have a customer complain, I ate at your restaurant last night. I didn't sleep all night. And 9 out of 10 times I'll kind of go, well, what did you have? And they'll like, oh, we had the rabbit followed by the lamb. And we kind of know that, people at home often have lean leg of lamb, sliced lamb, that's pretty neat. But when we're taking the whole, the stomach flap of the lamb and we're wrapping around the loin and we're doing a more intense French preparation of lamb, that sometimes, the fat of the lamb and the fibers plus, everything else that they've had in a weird meal, in a restaurant meal. You think about a restaurant meal, sometimes it could be some clams, oysters, shrimp, urchin, a bunch of vegetables that they're not used to eating that may or may not be not cooked enough or raw-ish, then followed by proteins and starch, then followed by cheese and dessert. It seems it's a lot of different foods.
Yeah. Plus all the wine.
Plus all the wine. And your daily diet might be a lot more pure and simple, If you look at a tasting menu, right? If you look at a 12-course tasting menu and you put all of that in a blender, it'd be kind of gross.
I definitely occasionally feel hung over from that kind of meal with no alcohol. Just the food, it does a number. Yeah. Even if it's all good, if there's, I guess, too much variety.
Thanks. A little bit of roasted garlic, a little bit of pole beans, a little bit of Swiss chard, a little bit of cabbage that was maybe raw, in a slaw, followed by, let's say, 2 kinds of meat. It's, the milkshake, which is your stomach. Our stomachs are, like a 750 milliliter bottle of water, It's, it can be hard to process,
Yeah, and your evolutionary biology is asking, how the hell did you do this? How'd you get all this food? It doesn't make any sense.
Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah. How did that's not even possible.
Yeah, that shouldn't be possible. JM, do you want to cue us in and we can actually pick up on this conversation?
Yeah. Hey, all right, everyone. So today on the podcast, we have a really special guest, Dave McMillan, who is, formerly from Joe Beef, the famous restaurant here in Montreal, world famous, really, really, really good restaurant. And Dave lives not too far from here now, and he's picking up on new adventures, but he's definitely a connoisseur of good food, of good wines, but also of just the whole spirit of just farming. And now, now you're a farmer.
I'm the worst farmer in that area, probably. I'm not the best farmer in the neighborhood. I had a nice career in the restaurant business, but I always craved waking up early, and going to bed early, So, my favorite relationships in the restaurant business were always, based on the relationships that I had with either oystermen, clam people, lobster fishermen, and then all the farmers that would, bring us stuff to the back doors of the restaurants, right? A relationship with the endive person, with the mushroom people, right? It was kind of always like, my pathway to the country, right? I think when I got tired of the restaurant business and it no longer interested me, I'd started building this farm while I was still supposedly happy at work, right? I was planting a 15,000 vine vineyard, while I had a full-time, job and ran, multiple restaurants, with my partners at that time. What's funny about that, though, the parallel is like, I was pretty good at the restaurant business. I have a really good reputation as a great Canadian chef and so on. And it's really humbling to be possibly, the worst viticulturalist and farmer in Quebec.
I cycled through your vines and they look great. Do you think there's a lot of chefs and restaurant owners that have that special relationships with the farmers?
Absolutely. It's one of the greatest parts of being a chef, I think, and the great chefs are the ones that, I see have the most success are the ones that are closest to that, right? Because it's really easy just to be a chef and order everything from one phone number. You have, everything from Cisco, and everything from the fruits and vegetables market, right? Because it's easier for you. It's way easier. Your life is going to be a lot easier if you can order bleach, mop heads, chickens, frozen shrimp, IQF frozen fish portions, lamb portions, everything from one phone number, right? As opposed to having to call a guy in the townships that may or may not have Hubbard squash, right? Yeah. Calling another, a girl down the road here that, specializes in Asian vegetables. Remembering to always call Marie-Hélène because she grows elephant garlic and you better call her once a year if you want to use that garlic, right? So your job as a chef can turn into, 50 phone calls as opposed to 2 or 3. Yeah. I'm always jealous of the sushi guys, right? The sushi guys, you should see these catalogs. They're amazing. There's this company called True World Fisheries. I think they're at one time in history, they were kind of part of the Moonies, remember the Moonies?
The Moonies?
The Moonies, it was kind of like a cult, like a religious cult, but they were also really good at business.
Is it a U.S. cult?
A
cult in the U.S.?
It's an Asian cult, but they used to be in like airports and, Google it, it's interesting. And anyway, True World Seafoods has a food catalog the size of a phone book. You can order tables, chairs, kimonos, hats, banners, Japanese banners. You can order lamps. You can basically order
the
whole restaurant. Yeah. And then like the shrimp page is 8 pages and maybe 1,000 SKUs. You can have really cheap shrimp if you're going to be a really cheap gas station sushi restaurant, and you can have the best shrimp flown in from Toyosu Market.
Wow.
Right? The tuna is incredible. The tuna page is like all grades of tuna, whole loin, fresh, bluefin, yellowfin, flown in, albacore, or portioned, or pre-cut, and everything's like super deep freezer, right? Minus 50 degrees and so on. It's interesting, right?
And so I imagine there's a lot of restaurants that are operating in that kind of mind frame because it's better for business.
It's better for business to have one phone call and one invoice, right? It's so much easier, right?
So then what's the drive to do it the harder way?
Well, that's why there's many restaurants, but only a few that are truly exceptional, right? If you look at, most of the restaurants we drive by every day, we don't think that there's 100 restaurants in Cowansville. There's probably, 50 but some of them are, commercial chains. Like, commercial chains don't care where the green beans are from, whether they're from Guatemala, California, Argentina, Europe, here, and generally they all wish that they could be frozen, and so that's what you look at, right?
Why, as a chef, then did you care?
I just worked for the right people very young. I worked for great chefs at a very young age when I was open to learn, when I was very influenceable, right? I worked for two chefs in France, one in the countryside in Burgundy, in Auxey-Durès. I worked at a little French restaurant there where it was catamount, right? The product that's all he talked about. But it was also, he talked about wine in the same way, talked about cheese in that way, talked about bread in that way. So it was just a part of the conversation, right? It wasn't, nothing about the restaurant business to those guys was going to be easy, right? Everything was a struggle, right? The conversations, my God, I must be 20,000 hours deep into Bressan Bluefoot chicken, how to feed them, how to, stop them from feeding on grass and move them to powdered milk, what the powdered milk should be, what is powdered milk, how to make corn polenta to fatten them up, all these different things, right? So many of those conversations, so much useless information, inside my brain about those things. Like, viticulture is another. Like how many hours have we spoken about viticulture with my colleagues and friends? It's like, there's a lot of information to process.
And the second chef is that
Then I worked for a special chef. He was called Jean-Paul Thibert. He was known as like a very creative fellow. He was the son of a guinea hen chicken farmer. They both were, praised, applauded. Bresson, and you know anything about the volaille de Bresse chicken?
Tell us.
So Bresse chicken is, considered the finest chicken in the world. There's many chickens in the world, but one of the most specialized, it's an growing systems for these chickens in the Bresse region of South Burgundy is the Bresse chicken. So it's like the French flag, number one. It's a blue-footed, white-bodied with a red crest. Red, white, and blue, like the French flag.
That's the thing.
Right? So I've got some at the farm, nice blue feet, really cool. And so they farm these chickens in an area of the Bresse, which is quite swampy. So the measure of earthworms, they'd measure this, by the way, in the appellation. And the measure of earthworms per square meter is indicative about how many chickens you can have per acre on your property.
Wow.
You will never see a Bresse farm that has any dry patches of grass. It's usually just pure, lush green fields, and these spotted with these red, white, and blue chickens throughout. Most of them have an in and out abattoir on site. So they process their own chickens on their farms. They're really cute micro abattoirs. They're controlled and they're spotless.
That's in the U.S.?
That's in France.
That's in France.
In the Bresse region. You can buy now Bresse chickens, chicks. I guess people have managed to smuggle some over, and now they are available here. But to raise them in the conditions that say that the French do with the AOC, that's Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée for the chickens, is quite special. Even the way they go to market, they come to market head on, feathers on still. Okay, the blue feet are on. All the chickens have a band, like an aluminum band around their foot. They're kind of Japanese, packed into a little box, and they're wrapped in cheesecloth in a very tight little mummified little way, and then they have their beautiful red, white, and blue Bresson crest sticker. And these chickens can go. We see chickens at the grocery store here. In our town, you can get a $15 chicken. You get a pretty good chicken, like, a grain-fed one for 22 maybe. And then you might get an organic one for around 26, 27 bucks.
How much was that one?
They can, a chapon, what they call a castrated male there, can go like $100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so to have, let's say, a volaille de Bresse for 4 people in a restaurant in France is a big deal. It's an expensive thing. It's more expensive than a double côte de bœuf in a Montreal restaurant of excellent beef, right? So how do we get on that?
Have you eaten any of your own yet?
I worked in restaurants. So I worked at that Thibert guy, and he was the son of a Bresson chicken farmer. So, we cooked a lot of Bresson chickens there. And, his big thing was that, in his restaurant, when you get a chicken leg, at the table, they'll, on the band around the foot, they'd all said Thibert.
Oh.
So that was a big deal. So those chickens generally are roasted, salt and pepper, blah, 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 served with beautiful, vegetables or a medley of vegetables. But also, there's 2 big recipes there. There's one en vessie, where the chicken is basically poached and steamed inside of the bladder of a pig, right?
Okay.
And then there's the volaille de Bresse, famous with morels and chicken, morels and vin jaune, the yellow wine from the Jura, or just, then there's variations on that. It can be Burgundy wines, village appropriate to where the restaurants are, right?
So definitely, like the listeners now and you, Chris, are understanding that Dave is a great storyteller and a fine food connoisseur, because this is all the influence that we get from France mostly, prior to now. But then Joe Beef, and just so, I don't know, Dave, if you can just kind of, I don't want to sum up Joe Beef, but just so that the listeners kind of have a feel for what the restaurant is and how it became so popular and just kind of the storyline.
I think Joe Beef was a perfect storm back in the day. Like, I was close with Fred and Allison, and of course we, with Meredith back then. My ex-wife Julie used to work with us. And we were, a bunch of us had been working in different Montreal restaurants for a long time. And I think notably Fred and I had a pretty long career. I think Fred and I worked for a few years at Globe back in those days. Mm-hmm. And Allison was around Globe and Bonanante. So was Julie. So was Meredith. Vanya, of course, famous Vanya Filipovic, the sommelier, was always with us every day in all our adventures.
She now owns Vin
Mon Lapin.
Vin Mon Lapin.
Yeah, and she owns a wine agency called Vin Dame Jeanne.
Yeah.
And is one of the possibly most prolific, wine people in Canada, most influential wine people in Canada. And her husband, of course, Marc-Olivier Frappier, who's also chef and owner of Vin Mon Lapin, was with us for years at Joe Beef as chef de cuisine.
He was my first connection with Joe Beef, with Marco. He was buying my veggies. And
a very solid kid. Yeah. Like, he'll
love them to death.
Calls everyone. He'll drive 11 hours if he can figure out there's a guy who's got whitefish, caviar.
Yeah.
He's very passionate about products and locality, and deservedly is the best restaurant in Canada.
Yeah.
He's put in his time. Yeah. People don't know, like, that guy, he opened Vin Mon Lapin and is today the best best chef in Canada, best restaurant in Canada. But yeah.
He had a good job. He had a good job with you guys, and then decided to take his own kind of leap of faith.
What I'm trying to say is he's been one of the best chefs in Canada for a longer time than people understand, right? He was chef de cuisine at Joe Beef when Joe Beef was, receiving, major awards and top 3 restaurant, accolades. Yeah. Marco was the guy there. So he's been a very, influential, important chef for a long time. So is Vanya, they were integral parts of the Joe Beef Group restaurant. And Vin Papillon, we opened with them as well, and so on. Anyway, to make a long story quick, we opened Joe Beef in that neighborhood. It didn't seem to make sense financially. Nobody believed in it. We were kind of like the canaries in the coal mine. If you think about a small restaurant, I think it was like 28 seats with 2 cooks, me, Fred, Allison, Meredith, Vanya, my ex, Julie, and, we didn't care. We kind of fed up on the restaurant business, and we wanted to run a 28-seat restaurant.
And do quality.
And at that time, we were Fred and I were very skilled. You know, like we'd been working at Globe doing like 180 customers a night, every night for years, you know, not every night, but you know.
Yeah.
You
we
knew
did,
the business of
big numbers.
streamlining the kitchen and then
for us to go into a 25-seat restaurant wasn't fair almost. You know, like we were used to, you know, like massive stress, massive volume. And even, you know, the work that we did at those big restaurants, I still stand behind. Like, you know, we did good work for 180 people at Globe and for years, you know, we pushed those restaurants forward, and we never sacrificed our ethics, even if we were in like a fashion district kind of hip restaurant that turned into a little bit of a nightclub after 11 p.m. I feel that the food that we did there, you know, between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night was always, you know, very good.
That's the famous St. Lawrence,
the St. Lawrence vibe, you know.
Yeah.
And then, so when we opened on Notre Dame, it was cool too because we were the only restaurant there. Back then, there was tons of empty stores. It was only antique dealers down there. There was 0 restaurants on Notre Dame Street. Today, Notre Dame Street is one of the streets you go on if you want to eat good food in Montreal.
Yeah,
you know, it's a great address. You know, there's countless restaurants from one end to the other now that are great. Yeah. So then, you know, it was just a flash after that. We opened the restaurant and we just started doing our work. And then, you know, we got to make the restaurant a little bit bigger. We got to buy Liverpool House, which is basically next door. Eventually we did Vin Papillon. Eventually we did Vin Bon Lapin. It just goes real quick, you know. And then...
That's 20 years?
Oh, I think it was 15 or something. I don't even know. I'm really terrible with that stuff. And it was great. We had fun. We wrote a couple books, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I always felt there was an emptiness in me, you know. Like, we had the accolades. It was cool. But I couldn't believe that, and I struggled with, am I just going to sit here now and show up 2 or 3 days a week and, like, watch, you know, lobster spaghetti and this and that go off, you know. And I was like... It was unfair, you know, and I was, you know, struggling with, you know, personal stuff, like just having all the success in the world, but being unhappy, kind of.
Yeah.
You know?
The restaurant is like a success, but you're like...
Everything's a success. I'm a success even, you know? Yeah. I would go out and people, oh my God, you know, those guys, amazing. We love you, blah, blah, blah. But I was just like, I felt like a hole in me, you know? And it was definitely, I was unhappy and it was manifesting itself that way. I knew that when I'd get into my car, I bought that ramshackle old building, that farm, my farm on Dutch, Hayfield Farm.
Yeah.
For nothing, you know? And
it's a nice spot.
It's a nice spot. But when I would go there to work on the weekends, you know, I knew then it was like, I don't know, light filled my soul, you know?
Could I
say a few words?
No, I want to have a jumping off point here to start us into the next portion of the conversation, but I'm sure we're going to circle so many times.
I'm sorry that I ramble.
No.
It's perfect.
Well, because everything's connected, so how could we not circle back and forth? But what I wanted to say is that, you know, your first book and something I've heard you say many times is this phrase, the art of living. And you've said this term, and I think you were inspired a lot by things in Europe. But you were using that term back when you were living the high-paced city restaurant life. So I'm very curious as to how the art of living is for you now in your new life on the farm.
That's exactly it. It's the art of living. I enjoy thoroughly, you know, watching the sunrise. From my bedroom, I see the sunrise over Jay Peak, you know, from my pillow, you know. I see the sun come over the crest of Jay Peak, shine into my bedroom.
Jay Peak in Vermont.
I can't, you know, like that's still, it never gets old. Also in my restaurant life, I never saw the sunrise. I was in bed, you know, 1, 2, 3 a.m. every day. So you know, I hadn't seen the sunrise. So I've been, you know, living this new lifestyle now for like, 4 or 5 years, and it doesn't get tired. I also like having coffee alone by myself. I like lighting the fire by myself so my family's warm when they come downstairs. I love putting on my rubber boots. I love letting the chickens out of the coop.
You're explaining my morning and my life.
Yeah, but now I do the ducks. I do the chickens. I let the chickens out. Then I go visit the ducks. And you're right; they do soil their water frequently. So I change their water a lot more. And then I kind of, as I finish my coffee, I summarize what work is it that we have to do today and what priority. Farming is interesting. It reminds me a lot of catering in the restaurant business. You can make one decision on the farm. If I have people coming to help, let's say, so I have one full-time employee, Emerson, who does, most of the pruning and viticulture and tying up of the vines. He kind of specializes at a certain kind of work that needs to be done. Excuse me, in a time frame. But then I have other friends and volunteers and some Ukrainians that come and help out as well. And when we make decisions about how we work in the farm, they have to be really thought about, because when we intervene in the vineyard, there's 46 rows of vines with a totality of 15,000 vines. So if we decide to do an operation on one vine, it means we're going to do that 15,000 times in 46 rows. So you really can't just make a spur of the moment decision like, tonight the salmon we're going to serve with asparagus. Decision done. It's over now. Yeah. Then the chefs, they go off and they peel asparagus and they cut salmon, right? And they make a sauce. But now we have to think a lot clearer. Are we leaving the canes longer? Are we taking buds off the bottom? Are we gonna clear the root of the base of the vine, the trunk, with hose, right? To free up. So are we gonna weed the garden manually? Are we is the soil too soft to take the tractor into the vineyard today? When am I spraying? When was the last time it rained? Can I spray less?
It's so funny when I hear Dave say this. Like, for me, I don't want to say this is all easy. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying compared to running and owning a restaurant, for me, that's like much more seder
like
for me. Like, I get all
that's
that.
Your specialty.
Yeah.
Your specialty's always been farming.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at the restaurant like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
I'm the opposite. I'm like, I can open a restaurant, like no sweat.
No sweat.
I can fix your restaurant. I can go, I can consult, no problem.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. I think I've opened 15 or 20 restaurants. I've had 8 or 9 myself, right?
Yeah.
But
there's something beautiful in learning a new craft.
And humbling. And not being good at it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I love like that.
I love that too.
Top 3 chefs in the city, kind of arguably, for years.
Yeah. And in Canada.
And I'm like, everybody in Saint Armand is better at viticulture than I am. You get what I'm saying? I'll get there.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate Zach from L'Espiègle. I appreciate Kevin and Manon from Pigeon Hill. I appreciate my neighbor, Pierre-Alexandre, who's also in a startup mode at Vallée des Pucelles in Saint Armand.
Fred, Les Sœurs Racines.
Big Fred. I love Big Fred. He used to work for me. And his little farmstead and his agricultural project is inspirational, right? Yeah. They're wonderful people.
There's a saying that's like, in order to become really good at something, you first have to really suck at it. And I tell myself that all the time when trying to learn new things, because of how uncomfortable that is. That's the only reason most people don't do it.
Oh yeah,
because it's so uncomfortable to suck. But how enjoyable is it at the same time if you can embrace that and go through the suck? Because eventually, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it was like, if you think of 4 years ago, we planted the vineyard and it was time to start kind of weeding it and stuff like that, and had a tractor that I was scared of. Because I'd driven right. I've been 3 hours in a tractor in the totality of my life at 53 years old. And then I buy this piece of equipment, like a shredder, to shred the canes that we leave inside the rows. And I don't know, 3-point hitches and a PTO.
Who does that?
I do that.
Yeah, but not that many wine growers do this. Do you say wine growers? How do you call the industry? Like
yeah, sure, wine growers.
Wine growers?
Yeah, wine growers or grape growers.
Grape
In Ontario,
growers.
they call the grape growers of Ontario.
Okay.
Different places for different things.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, you know, wine is not part of the game, right? It's like the first job, first and foremost, the hardest part is growing grapes.
Yeah,
you know,
growing grapes.
Because without grapes, you don't get, you know, wine is, that's another thing, right?
Yeah. People forget that link, eh?
Yeah.
They drink the wine and they don't understand that it's connected to not just grapes, but a grape, a moment, a time, a way of doing.
It's made me change the way I
soil.
think about wine. That
Yeah.
way, what you're saying, it's like, I'm like, when I taste the wine now, I'm like looking at tasting struggle, temperature deficiencies. I can say it must have been cold because of the acidity, or, you know,
Yeah.
or the shorter growing season.
Yeah.
You know, I look at it completely different, you know. You can taste climate and weather
And soil.
and soil through the vintage.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas, you know, before it'd just like you'd use, you know, weird sommelier words. Right.
You can taste the story. It's funny to hear you say this because I would have thought that, well, you've always been someone that appreciates the story of food and that it adds to the experience of it. And here you are saying your experience fully changed just from that. Like, because you already had a story of it, I guess, right? But it was from other people that you just took it in and instead of experiencing it firsthand.
This episode is brought to you by Bootstrap Farmer. Bootstrap Farmer is an amazing company. It's focused on making high quality, durable, and ecological products for farmers and gardeners. They really stand out for me because one, they manufacture their product right in the US instead of relying on overseas factories. And two, they're focused on durability and sustainability. This means no single-use plastics that you have to rebuy every year and no cheap, flimsy metal that won't last. Their hoop house kits are among the best out there, made of super thick galvanized steel that will stand out to the elements and last you a very long time, I guarantee it. And their seating trays are absolutely indestructible. Believe me, we did a test here at the farm. A car ran over the trays and they literally didn't even deform. On top of that, the Bootstrap team is passionately dedicated to seeing the farming community grow and thrive. And that really means so much to me. You know that's why I do what I do here at the Market Gardener Institute. So if you care about what kind of companies you support with your dollars, check out Bootstrap Farmer. You can find them out at bootstrapfarmer.com. Thank you, Bootstrap, for all you do. Love you guys. See you soon.
I used to have weird thoughts about wines. You know, in the restaurant, I was always fine if we only had Burgundy reds and whites on the wine list. People said, that's insane. You have to have other things. And I said, I don't know. This is like, you know, of course I bent and, you know, people talked me out of these insane, you know, theories that I had. But I said, like, I think a restaurant at a certain point should be like, it's your restaurant. It's your farm.
Yeah.
I grow what I want.
Yeah.
And I don't care what you think, right? The restaurant business is certainly for the beginning years. You know, I think Fred and I and Allison, we didn't open. I think we opened at 7. People say we want to be at 6:30. Sorry, we're open at 7. We don't even unlock the door at 7, right? Later on, of course, that changed, right? But I'm going around in a circle.
No, but it's good. It's like what you're saying is that you're setting the tempo. You're setting, you know, what's going to be happening here. It's like on the farm, it's the same. Like I haven't heard a lot of, you know, grape growers shred their canes.
Yeah, well, you know,
like,
it's not a thing really. So, you know, think about that for a second, right? So we prune all the vineyard, and we're dropping all of the canes in the middle row.
Yeah.
Right. It's an awful mess.
Yeah.
And you know, my rows are, you know, 225 meters long, right? And I have 46 rows that way.
Yeah.
It's just like, again, it goes back to the restaurant business. I calculate the labor on this. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. How are we going to get to it? First of all, I have to buy a very expensive piece of equipment to be able to rake all of these canes out of the vineyard. And once I rake all of these canes out of the vineyard, I'm going to have a ball the size of a car of canes at the end of each row. And then what's my move? So I'm going to have 46 car-sized giant balls of vine.
You burn it.
I don't think that's the move, right?
Yeah.
That's like people say, oh yeah, it's beneficial, the ashes. I don't know.
No,
Not
it's
as much
also-
as the chips would be.
Yeah.
Right.
Chips.
But there used to be a standard, and there still is there's naysayers on that. They say mulching the canes back into the vineyard might promote, might keep disease.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I disagree with that too.
And I bought the mulcher, and of course, Instagram is, if you stay away from all the nonsense, there's great people posting great stories on Instagram about every aspect of everyone's hobby.
Yeah.
So there's great winemakers saying, here, I bought this shredder. This is what the row looks like before. This is what the row looks like after. And when I saw a few of those videos, I was like, wow, look at that. Like, it's like basically paper. Right? And after doing it myself, you couldn't even tell after 7 days.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Like there's like, if I mow even like 10 days after mulching canes, there's not even a bit of fragment left, right? It's reabsorbed into the soil. And I've noticed that, we've been changing the soil now for 5 years. I can take a shovel anywhere in my vineyard now and just drop a spade in the middle of the row, and I guarantee you fat, juicy earthworms. And that was not the case when I planted that vineyard. We have beautiful middle row, how do you call it? Dandelions, grass, clover.
You let it grow.
Purslane. I let the middles grow.
Yeah.
Right. I like, like I was in my head, I'm always working towards, can I walk in this vineyard barefoot? Can I walk in this vineyard with sandals?
Can I get married here?
Yes, but staying, within the confines of regenerative organic agriculture. Like the other funny thing is, like, my vineyard's basically a stone slope that leads right to my backyard of my house where my well is. Right. So when I think about chemical spraying and doing interventions in the vineyard, my thoughts are further than if it was a plot of land 20 kilometers away in a forest.
Yeah.
I drink, shower, and swim in the water that drains off my vineyard, and I feed it to my animals. Right. So what we do in that vineyard is always on my mind, to the detriment of the vines. I spray so little that, I do have little fungal issues,
It's a microcosm of what we all because you're just like seeing literally a slope goes to your well, but I mean, everywhere the water is going into other water. And so, but it's just interesting.
I want to circle back to your question of the art of living, because, knowing Dave from, personally now, but also from reputation, and the fact that you own like a very successful, not just a restaurant, but a chain of restaurant.
I don't own anything.
Well, you used to own, whatever. You're part of that group. There's a lot of people probably in that kind of motion that would have just like, I'm the owner of a vineyard down in Tuscany. And that's how they express their love for farming. It's like, I own this vineyard, I own this. But that's not what Dave is doing. Dave is like saying, I'm going to go back to square roots and just start a vineyard myself. And that's, for me, that's the real connection of this podcast even. It's like, this is what this is all about. It's being real and doing stuff for real for the right reasons. And
I want to be exhausted. You see, I can't have this like career in the restaurant business. You know what? I got to the end of my restaurant career. I was not exhausted anymore because I was like the boss of 140 people with my partners, right? And I wasn't in any kind of job. My only, stress at work was anxiety, right? And
about what could be,
what could go wrong, about what could happen with all this staff. I hope everybody got home safe last night. I hope we don't get robbed. I hope we don't have a fire. I hope that they put the garbage away properly. I hope like all the moving parts that make restaurants happen was always like this like nightmare of stuff. All right. So that was the exhausting part. But I want to be physically exhausted at my age, right? I used to love being a line cook. When I was a line cook and there was 4 guys ahead of me that were going to be chef before me, I used to love having my station. When I was in charge of appetizers.
Yeah.
And I used to love doing that. I'd show up, put my apron on, rush, do my shift, do my work, clean my station, go, do my orders, go home. I was tired.
Yeah. And the
beer tasted good.
Time went fast.
Time went fast, and I enjoyed what I was doing. I didn't have the stress or the burden of leadership. Right? When I come back to the farm, you know what I mean, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Burden of leadership.
I hear that.
So when I come back to the farm, it's me and Emerson. Emerson works alone. He's the happiest guy probably I've ever met, right? That guy barely says hi to me in the morning. And he puts on he has his little like JBL speaker that hangs around his neck. And he's dressed for the apocalypse, right? Doesn't let any sun touch his body. And just prunes and tucks vines all day long, listens to sports radio, podcasts, very quiet man.
Are you listening, Emerson?
Yeah,
He's probably not.
Yeah.
He's Italian, right? So he's very much Italian. It's all Italian podcasts. And I enjoy it so much. Like the exact same thing. Like when my best days are the ones like, being in the vineyard at 8 o'clock, well coffeeed up. And like, I hope I can get 8 rows done today or 7 rows done today. And, and I've listened to like 11 podcasts and 5, hours of music. And, my wife and my kid brought me like a sandwich that I ate in the vineyard, sitting down. And over the years now, I've noticed like, different, more birds and more, it's changing. Like we're changing the landscape, right? Before that was just basically a cornfield and had been a cornfield for, what do you think? 100 years?
I would say 40.
40 years. That field behind my house was a cornfield. Yeah. I'm surrounded by soy and corn and forests, but like every day I see 40 deer, 30 turkeys, a couple of groundhogs. We have a bald eagle now that goes around Saint Armand. Pierre Alexandre at the other end of Saint Armand can see the bald eagle in the morning. I'll see him in the afternoon. We got those things. What do you call it in English? Urubu.
Yeah, they're like big birds that eat on the
carrion?
Vultures.
Oh, vultures.
Yeah,
those
everywhere.
things.
Yeah.
I almost hit one this morning coming here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the deers though, we should shoot them all.
It's a problem.
They're destroying the ecosystem of our area.
I feel like I don't know anything so much about how many. It just seems that there are quite a lot.
They're
I don't know if I should see 40.
That problem.
I don't know how healthy that could
is
be.
much worse the further south you go. And it's slowly just coming up. Because, everything that's changing slowly, like the deer population just keeps increasing further and further north, basically.
Yeah, tell us what the experience was in New Jersey with the deer population there.
Yeah, so in New Jersey, the deer population is 10 times too many. That's like a statistical fact based on analysis by scientists, which is crazy. And in the fall, it's like clockwork. When you go for a drive, you just see dead deer all over the roads. Because there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of car accidents with deer.
And then they had an unlimited amount of quotas.
In many parts of the state, if you're bow hunting, the limit for does is unlimited. And here they've went from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
And there we had a symposium in Fredericksburg, and that was a big talking point. I got up and spoke about what New Jersey's doing. Not that I know what is best for here, but it seemed to me that 2 is maybe
not enough.
Like, could it at least be 4 or 5? It just felt like such a baby step in a problem that's about to become so much worse. Like every year you let it go.
But the first year that 5 years ago, I would see a couple.
Yeah.
No,
but now I see like herds.
Yeah. I've just hit my first one 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow!
It was 6 a.m. I was driving, going to hockey, and then I just hit it, and it flew. I'm And I was thinking to myself, this is not the last one I hit. This
closest-
is one of many.
The closest I ever came was coming back from your farm, actually.
Yeah.
Right on that, all the huge cornfields there on both sides.
There's like 200 of them.
It's our standard, how can I say? It's our standard greeting and goodbye at the farm. Like I hear my wife always like, okay, so
careful.
you're coming, be careful for the deer. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
Put your high beams on. If there's no other cars coming, drive slow when you're coming anywhere within 5-6 kilometers of the farm. Please be careful.
Yeah,
he says it to everybody that comes to the farm and anybody leaving.
Yeah.
Because the city people, we run an Airbnb and they're just fucking
They don't know.
cruising with the Porsche on.
For sure.
And I'm like, dude, you can't like.
Speaking of deer as a meat source, because I know that, well, you're pretty passionate about all kinds of different meats and about food being of story and of place. So are you eating deer? Are you
Oh
hunting?
yeah, I love deer. I don't hunt. I'm not a killer. I just like.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience. Like I guess I do it, but I just never have the opportunity, or it's not in my list of interests.
Yeah.
But I have all my neighbors hunt, and I can I'm given deer like constantly.
Do you
Well, there you
do
go.
you like the meat? Do you think is it nice? Is it good?
Oh, it's
meat?
delicious. I'm actually making right now. I'm curing 2 hinds as prosciutto.
Okay.
In Italy, they have prosciutto di cerba, which is deer prosciutto or prosciutto de serre, I guess. And I got to a point in my career where I feel like I can turn anything into prosciutto.
Yeah.
I'm confident.
Yeah.
That any animal can be prosciutto.
Yeah.
I've done that before, actually, with a hind of a deer. I was lucky. My people I lived with, one of them is absolutely brilliant chef, and so he took it and salted the crap out of it, and it was amazing what we ended up eating. I don't even think we really ever gave it long enough to fully finish, but we were just slicing off pieces every day.
I would say my only little thing that I would say about deer meat is like all this GMO corn that they're eating. It's like,
Yeah, there's something to that.
I don't know if I'm over, if it's drama for nothing, but it's still.
No, for sure it's a thing, man.
It's like they're in the cornfield every day.
My farmer said that my neighbor said he's going to have no crop because that massive herd, which is like across the street from my farm, where the pig nursery is there.
Yeah, it looks like my house. I bought the house that I have was exactly that building. It's the same building.
And there's that massive herd there, and he said we're going to have no soy out of that field. That's like not a small field. That's a 7 or 8 or 9 acre field of soy. He says we're not even going to pick it.
They spend every night in that field, the deer.
Yeah, and it's funny because my buddy Primo, he'll go out at night, for a roadside pee before going to bed. And he brings the flashlight, turns the flashlight on, and there are deer like just on the other side of the road. They're all standing there.
Yeah, the eyes.
Like 10 feet from the house.
That's the art of living.
Oh boy. Well, it's just part of it's the terrier right now. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And there's so many laws that can't allow us to cook. Like at the restaurant here, I'd love to serve.
We tried years ago. I think Normand Laprise and Martin, along with some lobbyists whose name who I forget, tried to
open up
that, And I think at that time, Pauline Marois' government thought she was going to get in. You remember? That was a few years ago.
No.
Anyway, whatever.
I wasn't really interested in restaurant things at that time.
But I thought it was a good plan. It's not much. Like we're not asking for much. Like look at tuna, right? Mm-hmm. So Gaspé now, that wasn't a thing like 8 years ago. Getting bluefin tuna from Gaspé to Montreal restaurants was not a thing. You never heard of that. I didn't even know there was bluefin tuna out there. Yeah. I don't even think the fishermen knew either, right?
So it's a new. The tunas, it's new that they're there.
The bluefin tunas being trucked into Montreal restaurants is a new thing, right? It's like not a new thing. It's 10 years old,
Okay.
I think it was first like Normand, Charles-Antoine.
Like I saw that fish. Like it's bigger than the table.
Oh yeah, they're huge.
It's incredible.
They're like Austin minis sometimes. And I think the number one fish kind of still go to Japan because there's a very sensitive way of catching that fish and killing it and bleeding it and getting its body temperature down really quickly.
Okay.
Right. So those fish, let's say that do pass muster at the dock, where the fishermen aren't, know more what they're doing perhaps than the others.
Yeah.
Those are prize fish, and they may go straight to New York or even packaged in a thermal blanket with ice and sent over to Japan. They're just Japanese buyers or guys that are certified to buy for the Japanese all along the East Coast where tuna is being caught, because some of these fish are $50,000, $20,000. Like it's no joke, that industry. Yeah. And but we see those fish. These are wild caught fish now, and the restaurateurs have found fishermen, but just by getting into the yellow pages and calling a few guys with boats, you'll figure out, who's got the licenses. And we see some fish now showing up in Quebec, and some restaurants like Pierre de Cochon will buy a whole one and break it down. And, and the Touquet will get one loin. Joe Beef might get a loin. And then Charles Antoine, they're broken down around the city.
Yeah.
And it goes well. And it's only a seasonal thing, right? It happens once, twice a year at a certain time. I don't see there's no reason that couldn't happen with deer, with the La Faune. You still have to get your tags. I don't know. Can we, we still have to, the animals have to be butchered in a real place. It's
also that, because that problem has so much history behind it, which is that deer were almost driven to extinction in the early 1900s. They almost were extinct in North America from market hunting, because that was how people were sustaining themselves. So then in come the regulations. There's various things that happened along the way, and then that has now brought the population back to too much in so many places. But the main worry with selling wild meat is, for one, you're now incentivizing like a kind of more of like a black market of it, of just some sleazy people that go out and kill a bunch at night and try to make money off of it. But you could just regulate that, right? Just
100%. A sturgeon fisherman. We used to have a house in Kamouraska, and in Kamouraska, there's two big fishmongers there. There's one of them called Wallet. I think he still has a sturgeon license, right? And one night I saw the lights were on at his fish store, like past 9:30, and I saw like the pickup truck was right backed up to the front door, and there was this trail of blood like through the front door of the shop. So I said, "Oh, this is interesting." I was just walking back from a restaurant, and I followed, and I go inside, and there's an 8 or 9 foot giant sturgeon, wild caught, that he'd brought in,
caught from
the St. Lawrence.
Wow,
yeah, up there. The water's salty, and there's a lot of sturgeon there. And there's an eel fishery in Kamouraska still to this day, and it's good fish. And so I saw these big sturgeon, and I go, "What do you do with the caviar?" And he explained to me, we have to, when we catch the fish, we gut them, and we have to throw the caviar out.
Isn't there a major penalty for?
Oh, he says, if there's an ounce of caviar in my boat, or they will freeze my bank account, close my store down, seize my boat, it's no joke. It's like they follow that to the line, right? It's if you're caught even with a cup of caviar, you're basically doomed.
So he's throwing it away.
They have to throw it right back into the St. Lawrence, because it's a meat industry, sturgeon meat, right? Because if they opened up, if they said, "Hey, we're starting a caviar thing," they think there'd be no sturgeon left in the St. Lawrence 5 years later.
Okay. Yeah, because of how much money you can make from it, right?
Yeah, so that's probably,
it's kind of like,
I'm sure that's something we screwed up in the past, hence incredible legislation today. Probably the same thing with deer. They're just terrified of opening it up again. And then what restaurants get deer meat? Is it going to be the top 10 restaurants? And then you're going to have the top 100 restaurants angry, right? So if you open it up, you kind of have to open it up.
Yeah, the politics of all of that.
It should be a government call. They used to do it up north with the caribou, when the caribou was plentiful. Today, they're not plentiful. They're even, I believe, endangered from what I understand. But you used to be able to buy government call caribou hinds. And then I think a disease swept through the herd there, and they're having big problems recovering.
One nice thing that's done with deer meat, it's done quite a bit in the U.S. I think there's smaller programs happening here, but they're not as well known yet, is like Hunters Helping the Hungry or the homeless programs, because in New Jersey, for instance, hunting there's a major side of it that is known as conservation hunting. It's people that are really hunting with that as their primary purpose in mind of just simply reducing the population, because the deer are preventing forest regrowth. So like they're essentially threatening the future of a given forest, which is wild. And like, you know, the dominant species that are going to be in that climax forest, that's what mostly the deer are eating all the saplings of. So for conservation hunters, you know, the conservationists, they want someone to come and kill 100 every year, and then they're just donating all those to homeless or these programs, which is pretty interesting. But I don't know if there's parallels there with what could be done as well.
I'd be pretty pissed if I was homeless and I was getting deer meat all the time. Like, it's good, but like, you know, I struggle with it. I like eating it, but like, I don't know, you know, once a month.
Yeah.
Not even once a week.
Chris, I don't know if that was in your cards, but I'd love to hear more about natural wines.
Oh, actually, I do too. Yeah.
And, you know, you're great, Dave, at explaining what natural wine is, what it isn't. It's like the 101 because, you know, obviously there's a lot of hype around it. And there's the essence of it that is, in my opinion, really pure and really what we want. But then there's all the misunderstanding of what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, so let's get through the misunderstanding part, right? Natural wine is a weird thing. You know, I'm also feel like I'm getting away from the term myself personally, because I just expect wine, right, to be
natural.
Well, yeah, wholesome. Let's say.
Okay.
Like I eat high quality eggs, right? And we all know what it takes to, you know, a non good egg and a really good egg. I like wholesome vegetables. I like to buy, you know, good quality meats. When I say that, I'm not talking about A5 Wagyu super leg. I'm talking about just a good chicken, a good rabbit, a good duck, some good local asparagus, good pumpkins, good, you know, good butternut squash, good food, right? And I expect that from the accompanying beverage. You know, I expect that from beer. You know, I'm sad that a lot of beer is not organic. You notice that there's very like. The craft beer movement is kind of hip and churns out a lot, almost excessively too much different beers. But I don't hear the craft beer movement, aside from Le Castor, to be honest.
Yeah, we don't really know them.
Le Castor is organic.
Yeah, they're not that popular.
Organic grains. They're popular in the city.
Yeah.
So whatever. So I'll move aside from that. But let's say just not a shout out to you, craft beer guys. Maybe your next move is organic. Grains and organic
to
barley.
The small farming world.
Correct.
I feel like they don't really, or it's not happening so much yet.
Yeah, it should. I feel it should be kind of maybe more the play than the latest cool hops from New Zealand.
Yeah,
on the other side of the world. So when it comes to natural wine, I just think I want a wholesome product. When it comes to wine, I don't even want to say natural anymore, right? Just a good, healthy, small vineyard. I don't want any wine that, say, we bring into the house or that my guests drink to be, you know, I don't want it to be the 1 millionth bottle produced of that vintage. The same thing as the chickens. I don't want to buy chicken from a giant factory farm. I'd like to buy some good chicken, perhaps from my neighbors or from a local butcher shop, you know. Same thing with wine, right? So we want wine to basically come off good regenerative or organic farms or biodynamic farms, whatever the people choose that works best for their situation. I don't see any, you know, you're organic or you're not, you're regenerative, whatever, or you just believe that you don't need to fill out all that paperwork yearly and pay those extra dollars, that you're a good dude and, you know, a good family and you're doing a good job.
It's not the label.
It's not the label.
It's not the label.
We see anyway. Like, you know, does this? Vanya used to say, "Does the wine come from?" You know, I want to drink wine that comes from magical gardens. Yeah, that's exactly what I want.
Or from a friend. You know, food from friends is.
Yeah, I want wine that comes from a magical garden, and that, you know, that was grown by a family of which I admire their values and way of handling themselves. Right. I don't really want to drink wine from a cigar smoking Lamborghini driver, you know, not to be, but that's all cool. If that's what you want, all the power to you. But I'm just saying, I don't want to drink small farm wine, right?
From Mondavi.
Mondavi is great. You know, everybody was great at one time, and at one time. But Robert Mondavi's story is just like most fascinating. Those are great vineyard sites. The Tokelon Vineyard, what they've done for the American wine industry is like, be counted in encyclopedias. It's amazing work. What it turned out to be, sadly, is a corporate money grab thing. It's sad that we can't even. I haven't even seen a bottle of Mondavi lying around. From the SAQ for a long time. We used to be able to get all kinds of products when Mondavi was alive, or even his kids, but that's not really much of a thing anymore, I feel, at least. And then there's that vinification aspect. So let's say, just assume that the vineyard is a magical garden, and that the family that's farming the vineyard is doing the best that they can at biodiversity, at intelligent fungicide control, or low copper spraying, looking to use alternative sprays like
microbes, whatever, like inoculating.
Some people are using microbes. We've even been seeing baking soda, harmless baking soda, do wonders here in this climate in Quebec. We don't know for how long it works, or but so far, I've been spraying baking soda in the vineyard, and it's great. Whey, some people use whey, it's supposedly really good turnouts with whey. And anyway, so that's one thing. So let's just say the vineyard is, the fruit's grown well. Then there's a second part, the vinification. The vinification should be kind of the same spirit. Let's just try to do the least possible here that we can. We can macerate these grapes for a little bit. We can direct press them. We can do a little bit of both, right? We can choose to use wood. We can choose amphora. We can also choose to use amphora from clay that's local, that the potter made down the street. Mm-hmm. We can use glass. We can use recycled glass. We do all these things. And to also do a clean vinification means that there might be, sometimes wines taste a little bit flawed, no matter all your best efforts along the way. Now, chemicals can correct so many flaws, right? So what's your move? Do you correct the flaws?
I just wanted to ask, though, like, what is, on paper, the difference between a natural wine and just wine?
I'd say supernatural wine would be like organic viticulture, followed by zero sulfur additions of the wine. So just like a natural fermentation. Yeah. And then settling of the wine naturally, and then basically no added anything to the wine. So
because the other wines are adding things to do what exactly?
Add sulfur, filter.
I've heard that they can add up to 100 different products to.
Oh yeah,
really
there's a couple of those. See, the thing is like I don't even know. That's why when I say like I can talk about food, till I'm blue in the head, but it's also a good thing. To I know so little. I don't know what the chemicals are, and I'm better off that way, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because if you're a full-blown enologist, and no disrespect to enologists, whatever, it's too much information. I only know how to make natural wine.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's just the simple way of making wine. I don't know what yeast looks like. I don't know, aside from the sulfur that we use in the vineyard, right? Mm-hmm. The powdered sulfur, there's another sulfur to put in wine. I've never seen it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like. So
it's like when people ask me, what is this weed? Like, I don't really know weeds because my gardens are always clean. Like, I don't, it's true. Like, I don't know the whole gamut of different weeds and all the different pesticides that you can use in conventional farming, because for 20 years, I've been farming not that way. Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's just say something. Apples, you crush the apples and they ferment, and you bottle them and you hope for the best.
Yeah, I've always felt that, or I've always seemed to me that when I hear about the natural wine, I'm like, that just sounds like when you make cider. Traditionally, it seems like, generally speaking, most cider is like natural cider in the same way natural wine is natural wine.
But sure, but the cider, you look at the weird point of cider, you kind of want like fallen fruit from never sprayed trees that you harvested wild would be the apex of cider.
Yeah.
You know, you discover this ancient orchard off a road somewhere down here. It's got these massive trees full of weird apples that are unidentifiable, right? And you turn that inside, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the best of the best.
Yeah.
Right? These 100-year-old trees of weird apples.
Yeah.
Probably cider apples, you know?
But you're right to connecting the natural wine movement for me. Like I see it a lot in Europe, in France mostly. It's like what it has allowed is to have smaller vineyard, smaller independently owned winemakers have a market and really thrive and really push products that are just kind of not commercialized.
Well, kind of what you did to farming is that natural wine is to, like, you know, everything used to come from bigger farms. Mm-hmm. And then you came along and taught all these people to have small farms. And now we have restaurants. We have many young people that have followed your model that want to sell to restaurants. And so that's really cool. The same kind of thing happened, let's say, in natural wine. If you think there was this, I want to rewind a little bit and just explain, there was this kind of period in time where there was these restaurants that were using top-notch diver sea scallops, beautiful duck from whatever farm, perfect chicken. So the chefs already had this beautiful mentality of seeking high-quality proteins and pairing them with high-quality vegetables. The chefs were already working in the local parameters, you know. All the food that the chefs were buying was sourced to the closest to the kitchen as possible. And then there was this cutoff, this thing that didn't make sense. The wine list didn't make sense. So there's the chef and his team in the kitchen, the back of the house, we say, producing all of this beautiful crafted food made, you know, from local farms. And then you have the somm in the front of the house and the dining room, a sommelier, who's basically buying the wines of Wine Spectator magazine, right? Basically, he's focusing on wines and what they scored or what they are rated on, where they're from, the rarity of how they're complicated to get. And the somm didn't really have the same holistic approach as the chef did. There was a disconnect. A disconnect there.
Yeah, and I see that
You'll see like this
chef, weird to witness that and think, why is it
why is this wine list full of weird Italian wine, like, you know, commercial Italian wine and commercial California wine and commercial Australian wine, and the food is sublime, but there's a disconnect with the wine list.
This podcast is proudly supported by Tessier Greenhouses. Tessier has always been one of my top choices for greenhouses and tunnels. For over 45 years, they've been manufacturing high quality and incredibly strong structures right here in North America. Their products can withstand the heavy snow loads we faced here in the Northeast, and their prices are among the best in the market. Tessier offers excellent service and expertise, always ready to help with customized solutions. I particularly appreciate their commitment to innovation and their willingness to listen to the needs of growers. At the Old Mill, we use several of their Gothic Caterpillar tunnels and micro tunnel for season extension, and I'm always impressed with their design and build quality. Without companies like Tessier, food sovereignty just wouldn't be possible. So thank you, Tessier, for helping us growers feed our community year-round. You guys rock.
Use promo code MGI10 for 10% off your first order and free shipping in select regions.
It's only later on, as, you know, chefs and wine buyers, because there's, you know, somm is relatively new. There's very few somms, like even 10 years ago, you know. It's kind of a new addition to the front of the house restaurant team. Let's say in Montreal terms, I mean, right? We couldn't even afford to have a person on staff that was buying wine only, right? But as the somms started eating out and, let's say, having better friendships with the restaurants, I think that the somm wanted to do as good of a job on the wine list as the chef was on his menu. So there became to be a connection there. So we see restaurants becoming drastically better quickly. And don't forget, also there was a problem. We needed years to educate the clients. But you couldn't just all of a sudden, you know, wean the dining room off the white and red wines that the general population were accustomed to, right?
There's a period for kind of like transition.
It's a multi-year.
Yeah.
You can't all of a sudden, the whole wine list now is like only natural Beaujolais and weird wines from the Loire, and you can't. People, are accustomed to drinking Cabernet Sauvignon and Shiraz and oaky Chardonnay.
This is a Jeff. He lives an hour away, and
Yeah,
he brought this bottle.
I remember. I'll tell you a funny story. Like, I used to run Globe, and the wine list was more conventional at that time. We were doing good work in the kitchen, and one of my friends back then, Jean-Philippe from Raisin, he's an importer who's still a prominent importer today. Started off basically like one of the first natural wines that everybody tasted all those years ago was Marcel Lapierre Morgon, which is still beloved today.
Yeah.
But today it seems to be a little bit more stable of a wine, and a bigger market than it was back in those days. But I remember Jean-Philippe had brought us a Chateau de Cambon that was vinified by Marcel Lapierre, back in those days. And I'd never had any wine like that. He basically opened the bottle, and it had re-fermented inside the bottle, and it was foaming. And then he goes, no, don't worry about it. You put your thumb on the top, and then you shake it up and down, and eventually the bubbles go away. Then you serve it to your customers. And I was like, I can't do that. Customers are going to freak out and walk away. And plus, what is this flavor? Oh, it's carbonic maceration. This wine is like, he's like, kind of like the godfather of carbonic maceration. So, so we had to go. And, orange wine was a stretch, everybody had their first orange wine in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And everybody couldn't get enough orange wine. And now we see like the orange wine sales kind of dissipating to where they should be. Right.
Yeah.
So, because for a long time, there was just like, let's say there was 3 wines, red, white, and rosé. And all of a sudden, there's red, white, rosé, natural white, natural rosé, natural maceration. Like all of a sudden we have like 9 wines to deal with, and we just had 3 or 4, right?
I want to tell you what I feel it is like. The natural wine is exactly what you said. This guy doing this in a very special way, probably limited kind of bottles. It's not just like and that's what the sommelier is here to say. And then like, we've tasted this wine, we like this guy, we like how he works. We want you to experience what this person's, expertise is. And I think, and then from one winemaker to the other, the taste is different because they have different experiences, different moods, terroirs. They're working with this, and just getting back to wines that are told in that way, for me, is what this is. Mm-hmm. And
there's an extreme that can't be taken too. I see it happen in Montreal restaurants. Like, when there's things like this happen, there can be extremes.
Like in Portlandia.
A little bit. Yeah. Somewhat like Portlandia. Like, listen, like my mom, or my dad, like,
yeah,
they've lived their lives.
Yeah.
And they deserve not to be spoken down to by a 31-year-old sommelier who's like a zealot for natural wine. Yeah. My mom just wants a glass of Chablis. Yeah. Do your fucking job. Yeah, Sorry, I should swear. But do your job and go get my mom a glass of wine that tastes like she doesn't want you to explain to her that this guy's got goats and he puts seaweed in his vineyard, and just you when you work in the dining room, you got to be a chameleon. You got to be a different guy at every table that you're serving. You got to. So my dad likes a nice red wine. Just get him a nice red wine, okay? Don't get him something that's fizzy. Don't get him something carbonic. Just get him a normal glass of red wine. So, we're getting there though now, Yeah. I feel that even natural wine's turning the corner to becoming clean wine. We have like nice wines that taste like Chablis, like finished, chiseled, precise, classic wines, but that are sulfite-free and originate from organic vineyards. And that was, the play from the beginning. We had to have all the weird experiments and this and that, but at the end of the day, give me a beautiful, super clean Chardonnay that was farmed organically and that was vinified clean.
Okay, tell me, David, educate me here, because when I travel in the U.S.,
it's so tough.
I never see this kind of wine, and I'm wondering, is the U.S. kind of behind on this? Why isn't there like all these local young farmers doing natural wines everywhere.
There are, and there's a resurgence, and we're going to start seeing that now because there's a lot of even young wine importers in Montreal that are paying attention to the young winemakers of California that are coming up. You know,
so it's happening.
It's totally happening. Yeah. Okay. The thing is I don't know, how much how the wines go to market. The grocery system and the distribution system in the USA is something else.
Yeah, it's corporate.
Right. So to get natural wine into a grocery store, I think is where, may never happen the way that it looks like to me. Right. But there's great natural wine importers in the US, Zevro Vine Selection, Jenny and Francois, that can ship all through the USA, right? Kermit Lynch has always done a great job on the West Coast. Sylvester Rovine on the West Coast does a great job. And so far, natural wine availability is getting better all the time. There's a great app called the Raisin app, right? Okay. And wherever you are in the world, if you kind of turn on this app and you let it geotag you, it's basically going to show you where natural wine is around you. You can be anywhere. Like you can be in a place where, I like Miami for some weird reason because I like eating seafood, but I go to Miami and we can find natural wine in Miami through the Raisin app.
Yeah,
right?
That's usually how you get good food too.
Yes.
They kind of link together.
Restaurants that fit the style of life that you live and with the people that,
Yeah, that's just how it is.
Because we are just like hobbyists, if you think about it, right? We're farm hobbyists, kind of, But there's also a podcast going on right now somewhere where there's 3 guys wearing Ferrari shirts talking about Formula One, right?
Yeah.
So, and those guys like different restaurants than we do. We're just...
Yeah. There's a great movie, if you want to see it, about natural wines called Mondo Vino. And I highly recommend it to everyone. It just explains what happened with, what was the famous American guy that, Parker?
Yeah.
How Parker kind of like blended the whole taste because... He
kind of had the stranglehold over the wine industry for a long time because he was rating wines basically on a concentration scale.
Yeah.
Like if you ever taste a wine from Robert Parker that scores 100 points, I believe that to be completely undrinkable.
Yeah.
He's deemed that wine 100 points. But
and that steered the whole industry into kind of like putting all these chemicals to have wine that would taste that, just to follow the trend.
Somewhat, kind of.
The movie kind of explains that, and I think it's a great primer for people to kind of get it a little bit. You have that.
Those wines are never going to disappear. Those big wineries.
But they make you sick. Like if I drink 1 glass of red wine at the airport, man, it's the next day I have a headache. If I drink 3 glasses of wine, of natural wine, like the next day, I'm ready to barbecue.
Yeah, I believe that sometimes there's natural wine, let's say, be more like allergen free. I think sulfite, and sulfur affects people in a certain way. Just like they say MSG is safe for you, but I know that if I have food laden with MSG, I get this kind of weird left side of my brain headache. That I can't get over. I like the way MSG makes a carrot taste, But I also know that it's also going to come with a headache. But supposedly, according to science, I'm wrong.
Yeah,
but whenever I have MSG, I do get that headache.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we talk about chickens?
Yeah, we can talk about chickens.
Because it seems to me like there's wine on your farm and there's also chickens, and that you're really into chickens.
I like chickens a lot. They're dirty little animals, and I wish chickens were friendlier.
Like you could cuddle them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted when I started, getting chickens.
And they wouldn't poop on you while you...
I thought that I saw myself having dinner, over, watching the sunset over the vineyard, surrounded by my chickens, with my favorite chicken maybe sitting on my lap.
Wow.
And the reality of that
pooping
is...
on you.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. But then,
we have them free ranging around our house. There's 3 of them. And they always are in the front porch, like in front of the bay window. And then that's where we enter and leave the house. And they always shit there. And every time I open the door, even sometimes they're in the house. And then if they're not there, the shit is there, and I'm like, oh my god, like chickens for me, like it's like I would.
Yeah. Do you have a rooster?
I don't have a rooster.
I mean, like, I'm actually a big fan of roosters.
Yeah, I have
Think
a
that,
rooster.
you have a good rooster?
Yeah, and when we just hatched eggs from them.
What kind of rooster do you have there? Do you know?
It's a Brahma. Before
nice.
that, we had a blue Wyandotte.
Yeah.
But he died unbeknownst to why.
I probably swallowed it.
It just happens. And then we actually just had a chicken this weekend. I think it's called sour crop. Have you ever had that? Or do you know what that is? It's their crop, like, which basically the equivalent of their, not really their stomach, but it's where they hold food before, like, and where it starts to get digested. It can have like a yeast infection. I think it's that. And then if you hold them upside down, they actually essentially vomit, but they're not really vomiting the way we do. It's just pouring out of the crop, but it can kill them, the sour crop. And
How many chickens do you have?
we just have 7.
7.
But we're going to add more to the farm.
Oh, I have 18, but we'll be up to 60, I think, in the next 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to hatch some more. We just put in, I believe, to be 45 ducks, maybe.
Okay.
Are you hatching your own?
The chickens? Yeah, I have an incubator.
Yeah.
My flock is a little bit weird right now because I went through like a flock, then we incubated a new flock. The problem is I had a bunch of different roosters. So I'm not sure what everything is right now. Everything looks a little bit mixed blood. And but we have a great rooster now. We had a bunch of different roosters that were, I don't know, man.
A mean rooster is a terrible thing to have.
Mean and just like dumb or just unregulated, like crowing all the time. Like, I was just like, you got to go, buddy. Like, I love you. You're gorgeous. But,
Yeah.
so now we have a good Bresson rooster who crows in the morning and when there's danger, right? And he's very prolific and he's a solid rooster. I have to say, like, we've had a few roosters and this is our best rooster yet. So now I'm going to start incubating his eggs. But I want to separate the female Bressons from the other birds that I have and just do pure Bressons with him.
And why did you get chickens in the first place?
I was always a Bresson.
Because of that first chef you work with.
Yeah, but
you
also
wanted
like
to
I've
have
read
that.
about Bressons. I've visited Bresson farms. I've eaten Bresson chicken multiple times. I eat my Bresson chickens. And listen, I've had multiple breeds of chicken.
I have to say, it's the first time, really, honestly, like it's the first time that I hear a chicken grower, if you can say that, kind of singulates a breed. Like here, it's very uncommon. Nobody talks like a chicken is a chicken.
Yeah, but it's not. They're not like there's some are good for different things. The Bresson chicken is one of the only chickens that takes fat intramuscularly.
Okay.
Okay, so humans, we carry fat around our waist, right? Around our arms, around our legs. You'll see that with Highland beef. I love Highland beef. I love looking at Highland beef. It's the most beautiful beef to look at. It's not the greatest beef to eat because it carries very little intramuscular fat. Okay. Then, we see today the craze with Wagyu, and we see like, obscene examples of like very marbled Wagyu beef on Instagram, which is more white than red. It's kind of gross. It's like eating a morbidly obese person somewhat. It's like it's not okay to do that to an animal to a certain extent. To have some good intramuscular fat structure on Wagyu beef is good. This white beef that the Americans love so much is basically the Japanese don't eat it. It's an export market for the U.S. Right. Yeah. Anyway, that said, the Bresson chicken is one of those chickens that carries a lot of its fat intramuscularly. So when you have a good fat chicken, like a roaster, and you slaughter it, you're going to notice like that there'll be very little fat around the cavity where a lot of that fat is, very little fat around the thighs where that yellow fat is around the thighs. But there'll be this weird layer of fat between the skin and the meat, and then striations throughout the breast, right? That are just basically these little lines of fat, right? That, basically it auto-bastes, right? It's a great bird. And plus their demeanor is funny because, I've spent a lot of time working in France, and they are emblematic to the French, this red, white, and blue chicken.
Yeah.
And they're like my French friends. They have the same kind of Paris vibe attitude, you know?
Yeah. They're talkative, I guess.
Yeah, but there you go. The see right there.
I see it.
So those are going to market. See how they're all head on. The big.
Nice. That's happy. Yeah, this one to the right. Just
you see the blue feet.
Yeah, I see them when I go to market in Paris.
Yeah. In France, they'll also have a chicken that looks like that called La Belle Rouge.
Yeah, you want to open it, Chris?
This one?
Yeah. Yeah, you see him with. That's what he was talking about with his head on.
See the band around the leg, the ring around the leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you, like this is exactly what, in my opinion, the food revolution is about. Like coming back to knowing the kind of chicken, like having a special thing about it. It's like this. When I look at that, I'm like, this is special.
You always say, what is high quality dining?
Yeah.
High quality dining. Like my whole career, I've had a great career in supposedly high quality dining. I'm cooking the best food of my career is happening at the farm right now. That nobody's getting. Nobody's paying for it.
Yeah.
And my chickens.
Yeah.
With, mushrooms from the forest and let's say my small asparagus patch plus my onions plus my last year's little Tokyo butter braised radishes, whatever. Yeah. Dude, it's
like turnips.
Lights out. It's like sometimes I cook a meal and I'll be like, $450. This is what I would charge to eat this because it's so impossible, The greatest meal I ever cooked once, I was in Kamouraska and I was walking along and they were hunting geese and I ran into my neighbor who was a goose hunter. He just gave me a goose. So I had a bag with me. I threw it inside the bag and I keep on walking and I picked a cup of juniper berries out of the juniper bushes that grow along the stone outcroppings along the St. Lawrence River. Then in the tidal pools, there was all this krill, like baby shrimp. I had a trucker hat, with the sieve in the back, and I sieved out another 2 cups of these tiny little krill, right? I kept on walking. I picked 4 or 5 apples off this abandoned apple tree, right? And I kept on walking, and I found these slippery jack boletus mushrooms, right? So on my walk, I was gifted a wild goose. I got juniper berries. I got an old sour apple. I got 2 cups of krill shrimp out of a tidal pool. Oh, I got a bunch of sea parsley and a little bit of sea asparagus, right? And I went back. I cleaned that goose. I braised its legs, right, into a kind of stew. I peeled the breasts. I roasted off the breasts. I deglazed the pan with the chopped apple, the juniper. And then right at the last second, I added a little bit of butter and then I added the krill shrimp, right? So then it was basically roasted goose with apples, wild parsley, sea asparagus, slippery jack boletus, and krill shrimp. It was like, dude, this is...
So not carrots and onions and...
No, it was just this is a 1 hour walk I took in nature. And everything was from nature, and it was a dish that was worthy of a shared dish for 4 people in a top tier Paris 3 Michelin star restaurant. Gorgeous meal,
I have a million questions
Me too.
off of that. I don't even know where to start. You go.
I see the time and I want to hear you on something.
Can I cut you off for 1 second? I want to say something.
Yeah.
I want to say something about, so see that what I explained, that happens here at this farm.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Of course.
I've eaten here sometimes, I've eaten here a few times. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'll have a bottle of wine with my wife that was made
here
a kilometer from here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll have in my during my meal 8 or 9 vegetables that are grown. I'm looking at the patches while I'm eating my meal where the vegetables are grown.
Yeah.
And that young chef is serving me a bit of chicken from a farm right around here and a little bit of beef from a farm right around here. So We don't have the silverware and white tablecloths and men in tuxedos and crystal chandeliers and a wine list like a phone book and a beautiful address on an expensive arrondissement of Paris. We're at fucking the old mill. We're at the old mill, eating on a wooden table, having perfect food, grown here, everything local, and it's just genius, right? And it's not precious. It's not. There's locals that eat here that have never been to the city and go to restaurants, or even my neighbors have no clue what Joe Beef is, or any clue about my career. They like me. I'm a nice guy. Sometimes I need a hand. They're But what they've managed to do here is make people feel comfortable in this room eating this food, right? It's good. I'm rambling. I had a point. Did I make my point?
I appreciate it, man. Like coming from
I'm
you.
not
But it's true.
I'm just saying, like, it's
I know
kind of,
because you've told me before that you like it here.
I like high quality food, and
Yeah.
it's rare and it's hard to find.
Could you speak a little bit, because you've mentioned, you were talking about the objects of the dining experience, and I've also heard you talk a lot about, hospitality, like extreme hospitality, about like, your passion for the kind of old-timey dining experiences, train cars, all that kind of stuff. Where does that, all those things kind of fit into your thinking now in your current life?
There's still that, and to be, history, the history of things has a large, impact on my life. I read about history, and I don't make any move without consulting history. I love that Saturday Night Live skit that they did the other day. Did you see it? The one about the Roman Empire?
No,
you didn't see that? It's like, Dad, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking about the Roman Empire. Anyway, I think about the Roman Empire a lot, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, I look towards those things. I was reading about bread the other day, and then I saw this like article come out about the bread of Pompeii and the Roman bread, the panis quadratus, right, which is basically a heavily spiced bread that was cut and split in four with a rope, and that's what the people ate back then. And I was like, that's weird, like that seems like if I was a baker, I'd be all over this. And I was like, fucking bakers, man, up your game. How are you guys all not making panis quadratus, right? Like, how is it that me, who's not a baker, I've just read like 10 scholarly articles about panis quadratus, right? So the answer to your question is like history, I guess. Like I like the history. I like an old teacup.
Yeah.
I like an old glass. I like an old chair. I like an old silver fork. Oh my God, cutlery. I'm obsessed. I have way too much information in my brain about cutlery than I should. I have an oyster fork collection. There must be 700 oyster forks. Just the fact that we've lost that. We've lost that today.
Yeah,
because everything's mass-produced stuff.
Everything's mass-produced. And I have I have coffee. I have teacups made in, preoccupied Japan, and I love drinking tea out of them. And then tea. I'll be going about tea, like everything,
Yeah.
Just be inquisitive about it all.
Silverware for fish.
Oh, yeah.
Specific.
Sauce spoons. People don't even know what those are.
Yeah.
A fish knife. People don't know what that is.
Yeah.
We've lost a lot of culture. Last night, I'll tell you this funny thing. I don't know. And my girlfriend, is French Canadian. I'm raised like, Anglophone Québécois. And I've been seeing these like Instagram reels pop up on La Soirée Canadienne. Do you remember that?
A hockey or
no? That show.
Oh, they would come and do they
would go to different towns in Quebec, and then everybody would come to the church basement or the town hall, and they would sing there was this guy, and they would sing their songs from their village, and they're always like answer back songs, like today, aujourd'hui on s'en va, c'est le jour du marché, and everybody goes, on s'en va au marché, And dude, that show lasted. That show is bigger than Tout le monde en parle. If you think about it, it lasted 32 years.
So she's.
It was on every Saturday. I grew up watching that show. I'm old enough that when I think it ended in 78, right? But from 2 years old to 8 years old, we had 3 channels on the television.
Yeah.
And I watched that show every Saturday and sang along while this guy visited all of these basically agricultural towns all over Quebec to assemble the locals, and they sing their traditional songs, right? And I was like stunned, like I have 2 very, pro-Quebec, French-Canadian friends, my wife being one of them, and I said, how have you never heard of this? And she goes, I've never heard of it. And then I said, text your dad. So she texted her dad, and her dad said, yeah, my parents used to watch that.
Yeah.
And her dad's older than me, whatever. So we started watching them on YouTube. So they're available on YouTube. Watch them. C'est la soirée canadienne on YouTube. There's a bunch of different videos. Some of them are dancing, but they're mostly chansons en réponse. And that's like, I was like, what a massive thing that we lost with this.
It brings me back to that saying I've said before, progress takes away what forever took to find. And it's
brilliant.
Like, that's everything you're speaking to.
See, Kentucky embraced the bluegrass thing, right? And today it's kind of preserved through that, right? Even the cooking of Appalachia is preserved somewhat through young people wanting to reconnect with their past. I've even met young chefs in Florida that are looking closely at what exactly is Florida cooking. And I'm like, that's super fascinating.
Yeah,
right?
Import.
And small scale farming is exactly this.
Yeah.
Because the majority of these people did not grow up in farming. Like I feel like most new small scale farmers, they're like suburban and urban kids.
Yeah, most tricks that I got are from books from the 1800s.
Yeah.
Or early 1900s.
We're going back to that, even in viticulture, like looking at those books, like, there's the new prunings. We're pruning a very old way this year just to combat. We had a little frost episode last year where I lost a good amount of my crop. And so I'm pruning in a way that most people wouldn't even approve of, right? Most of my neighbors would go, are you insane? And I'm like, I don't, maybe I am, but let's see. Let's see. I'm leaving a lot of buds on, and I'm leaving 4 canes instead of 2, and I'm keeping 1 tucked in the earth, and that's what's going to happen this year.
TV plays a big role in culture, for sure. There's TV plays a big role, which brings me to Anthony Bourdain, because you were friends with him, and you have a history of him. Like not that many people now, and following me, I would say, know who this guy is. Really, he was famous for his shows.
Yeah, he wasn't super into farming.
But, he had something about him that got a lot of people to be interested in food and fine foods. And what was his quality of being somebody that's kind of carrying that message?
Well, he still described himself even on his Instagram profile. I think there was only one word, and it said enthusiast. Right?
Sounds like you too.
Yeah, well, a bit. He was enthused. Like, he loved all high quality food, but could also, penetrate through the nonsense and get to the core essence. Like, let's say Vietnamese food. What's my move? They would consult with many people, do a lot of research. They would go, this is the move. That's the Vietnamese restaurant, right? French cooking, same thing, right? Like, he was enthusiastic about food, but also about the purity of food, where it comes from, right? If you look at London is a really difficult place. There's a lot of really great restaurants. There's a lot of money in a town like London. There's beautiful, ornate, but you have to cut through all the smoke, all the mirrors, all the makeup, you have to scrub it off, you have to shave its head, you have to, and he was like, what is English cooking? Why is it? Right?
Yeah, so he was real about that.
Yeah, exactly. But in every capacity, like every time he made a move, like, it was like, he knew that Fred and I were 2, highly experienced cooks.
Crazy cooks.
That, loved, obsessed about French cooking and cutlery and glasses and like Alsatian wine glasses and oyster plates and, like all the, all that stuff, Fred was super into trains, and we always nerded out, and then we built this restaurant where we could nerd out together and about all our nerd things. And Tony was just another super nerd who like, can I see the oyster forks? Like, it was just,
He was into it.
he was a super nerd as well. He just understood that we were two boys playing. All right. And we were. And he also understood that Martin Picard is a big boy who's playing.
Yeah.
Martin is just living his life, doing his thing. But what is Martin Picard? He's a big boy who's built the sandcastle, of stuff. He's got his own way of doing things, and he made it happen. Normand, same thing. And then, there's a you in every province. There's a me in every city. It's just finding those people.
Yeah.
And then he was also historically, a nerd as well. Like, we could talk for hours. We spent hours in the car. We'd drive, from weird places, and our conversations are music, history, cutlery, food, and
Cutlery.
I know. It speaks so much to me because I'm like, I love old tools. I love old things in general.
Tony knew about fireplaces. Like, we've talked about jodel wood burning stoves.
The Joe tool number 3.
You're like, the squirrel one. What's the one with the arch in it where you can put the pot? Like, he knew that stuff. And I was like,
No, I love all because all these things, again, they're another layer in the story of something. That's why history is so cool.
Yeah.
It's
important.
It's another layer.
That was my point before when about the soirée canadienne, when I said that people don't even know what this is anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like
very sad.
my unilingual French friends don't know anything about these songs. These songs are so important. Like, I know them. And then last night I proceeded to play 10 or 15 very obscure Bottine Souriante songs that I know off by heart. And my wife is like, this is a whole other side of you that I don't know. How do you know all of these French songs perfectly? I go, because they're historically based. There's a song about tourtière where he basically, the whole song, he describes how to make tourtière. And you
That's
just listen
my
to the
recipe.
song and you'll like understand how to make tourtière, right? And I said, this is a super important song.
I've had somewhat of like a forlorn feeling occasionally recently of just thinking, like, looking at social media, like, have we just lost
We have.
something that we're never like, there's a weird feeling. I feel like it's very in the moment of just a loss of something that I don't know if we can get back. Like
I feel
a
that
way
destroyed.
of existing, that we're just so virtual.
Homogenizing. Oh, what's the
It's homogenizing
freaky.
is exactly what
It's
it is.
very freaky.
We saw food take a hit with Instagram, right?
Yeah, because
Local food, you say there was the thing, Bourdais, like there's a food, but Montreal food, there was a thing, right? Then there wasn't, right? Because Instagram, well, I'll tell you 2 stories fast though.
take your time.
When I was a kid and we were cooking in Montreal restaurants, you have to understand that I graduated high school in 1988. Let's say I was already working in restaurants by 1991, which today seems a fucking long time ago. Okay, 1991, 92.
Yep.
94, 95, like, for us to get information, there's no internet, there's no archive menus.
No.
The Bon Appetit magazine existed, Gourmet magazine existed, but nobody published their menus. If we wanted to see menus of famous chefs that we read about in magazines, because that was it,
Yeah.
we'd drive to New York City with a camera, and we would go to restaurants and take a picture of their menus. We'd go to 10 restaurants in a night. We had no money, and we'd look through the window at the food that people were eating. And I would take mental images of what plates they used, how they plated the duck. I'd heard that Jean-Georges at this one restaurant had this giant glass tank full of pineapples and vodka. And at the end of your meal, you could get pineapple vodka or something like that, or pineapple alcohol, right? But it was really impressive. It was behind the bar. There was like 40 pineapples in a giant glass tub with a little spigot, right? But that information was not available unless we got into our cars and we found it. We took pictures of menus and then we developed them, and I'd study these menus with my nerd friends, and then we'd practice things, and that's how we got our information, right?
And you had to be creative.
Yeah,
A little bit, yeah. We have to say, oh, that's a good idea. I like that less. I like this. This could apply in Quebec.
And you didn't have all the information, so you connected some of it to your own kind of.
But then you come back to Montreal, and back in those days, the top 10 restaurants in Montreal were like Le Caveau, La Mère Michel, Le Mât des Oliviers, Chez Henri, like it was Les Milliardises. It was it was a completely different landscape, right? It was all super French. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was like we used to sell foie de veau. We used to sell brain. Like I worked in a restaurant where every lunch we'd sell 18-liter buckets of brain at lunch. Wow. I couldn't give away we sell 2 whole livers at lunch. Like 2 whole livers, 47 portions of liver in a restaurant in Montreal at lunch on a Tuesday, right? Kidneys. You know, like whoever did kidneys in that restaurant was busy. He did like 35 orders, you know? So very little chicken breast. People had no interest in chicken breast or anything like that. You know, people eat kidneys, liver, sweetbreads, weird fish, anything. Anyway, I digress. But then Instagram came along. And yeah, it was a great homogenization, right? All of a sudden, the young chefs had all this information at their hands, and they didn't know really what to do with it. So, like, let's say Noma, the amazing Noma became a very deservedly so important restaurant in the world because René Redzepi's mind and his crew were doing something we never. What's Copenhagen? Like, what is Nordic cuisine? Yeah. Like, what is all this, right? All of a sudden, we were being flooded with all this new information about, like, Nordic cuisine, and some of it applied a little bit to, like, Quebec, you know? We also have juniper. We also have pine cones. We also don't have vegetables in the winter. We also, like, you know, so you saw this, like, Noma stuff kind of, like, because of Instagram, growing over the globe. All of a sudden, there was restaurants doing kind of Noma food in Southern California at the detriment of the cooking of Southern California.
Yeah.
Because it completely takes away any sense of
place. It was swaying how cooks cooked in San Francisco, right? It was swaying how cooks cooked in Chicago. It was swaying, like, before René Redzepi, there was the other big, like, I would say, cataclysmic food event was Ferran Adria, right? From Spain, right? Ferran Adria's restaurant was the first time we'd ever heard of molecular cuisine. It looks like an olive, you know, smells like an olive, tastes like an olive. It's not an olive. It was some kind of, like, you know, process to make something that looks like an olive from cellulose or whatever. I don't even know. Nor do I care. Right? But then everybody wanted to cook like Ferran Adria. Then everybody wanted to cook like Noma. And this, the device that was propagating this information to all the young brains being molded was Instagram and Facebook. So we're getting that information, right? I would even say that, you know, it was also somewhat responsible for basically the somewhat annihilation of and I'll get in a lot of trouble for saying this, and I'll say it anyway. The annihilation of French cooking in France. Right?
Because everyone's looking elsewhere for...
And that paired with the Michelin guide was almost the bullet in the head of country French cooking.
Fuck.
You cannot find. Yeah. And if you go drive through the Jura, find the traditional cooking of the Jura in the Jura. Forget about it. It's gone. The only place you'll get it is in old ladies' house, personal homes, private homes. Right? You cannot find it. Try either the classics of Burgundy in Burgundy. Rest in peace. That is finished. Escargot, coq au vin, jambon persillé, canard au vin rouge, gone. Finished. I can bring you to 5 places in Beaune that serve nachos, though. Right? I can show you restaurants that existed for 100 years in Burgundian villages that serve cheeseburgers now. Okay? So, you know, and also I'll just show you Michelin-starred restaurants in the countryside that have 3 stars that when you go into them, you feel like you're walking onto the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. Modernity gone south.
Yeah.
The doors open, you go into the bathroom, the glass changes colors, becomes opaque so they can't see you. The cutlery's weird. All the waiters are wearing like shirts that button from the left top to the bottom right, like you know, like design gone wrong, modernity gone wrong, the plating of food. They say, oh, this is tonight we're doing my version of chicken with morels and yellow wine, right? Which is a dish of chopped whole chicken cooked in cream, gravy, morels, and yellow wine, which is generally served in the middle of the table with rice or mashed potatoes, right? Now it's like a little piece of wing with a line of sauce, maybe a piece of cockscomb on the side of the plate, one pearl onion, and the totality of that weighs like, I don't know, 2 ounces, like 52 grams of food as your main course, right? The chef as artist,
Yeah.
you're not an artist, dude.
Yeah.
I have respect for artists. The chef is you're a worker, man. You're like a butler. You exist to serve.
Yeah.
I never forgot that too. I existed to serve, hospitality.
Yeah.
Right. I am there to cook for you. Thank you. The end.
The end.
We're there to serve you
Yeah.
wine and food, greet you, say good night, hope everything goes okay.
Yeah, and you learn from tradition, and then you at one point what happened is that you put a big constraint where it's like we have just a few places, and we'll be creative that way. But it's the same in farming. Like I see a lot of young people starting farms, and they're like reinventing how we grow vegetables. And there's people out there that've been doing it for so long, and they're not all right, these older growers. But especially if you're following in the footsteps of tradition, sometimes there's not a million ways to redo a dish or to grow a carrot.
Or sometimes they shouldn't be redone.
Yeah.
So what's next? We're gonna have young artists like repainting their versions of Picasso paintings or their versions of Winslow Homer paintings. Like I guarantee it. We'll hear it one day.
Yeah.
We'll hear some kids say, I wanted to reinterpret the great painters of Maine. This is my version of like Winslow Homer's paintings. I'm like, oh my God, man. I blame Instagram,
It's sorry, can I?
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting. I feel like we're collectively losing also our ability to think because we just we think we're thinking, but we're only thinking through the thing we're watching and reading on social media so much of the time. Because people just fill every void of thought with something to look at, and you're really thinking about what you're looking at, but you're not really thinking.
You're also being influenced sometimes.
You're influenced.
Winslow Homer, again, one of my favorite painters, said this one, in one of the books that I have of him, said this interesting line. He more or less said, like, to paint freely, you have to basically never go to an art show, don't be friends with artists, don't look at anybody else's art, live as, only focus on your thing. I always believed that too. I said, young chefs, just find your move.
Find your move.
Cook,
and then
looking
cook
for inspiration.
I found my move young, and I never deviated.
Yeah.
I never used square plates. I never put a line of sauce. I cooked this bourgeois French cooking, right, that I learned, I fell in love with, and I practice it my whole life. Fred, same thing. Fred still does it. He's still there today, hammering it out. He's still very much in love with the old style French cooking. Whereas I see other people just grabbing, they're just grabbing at Instagram trends, they're grabbing, they're doing this. Sometimes I look at the younger guys, man, using no disrespect for younger chefs, man,
They'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out. But I see, I look at their menus and I go, oh, he got this, he has this book, and he follows this guy on Instagram, obviously, because none of this is his, right? His whole menu is copied, right? And that's that, right?
What's the importance of home cooking to you?
More important than anything. I wish I had a bigger family. Right? I have a big family. I got 4 kids.
Bigger than 4 kids? You'd have 8?
It's not that. I wish, that my parents lived in my house. I wish that Andy's parents lived in my house.
You cook for everyone.
It's like you wish you had a bit of a village. It's kind of.
I like cooking dinner a lot. It's after a hard day working, it's one of the things I enjoy doing the most. That's what relaxes me. And I'm maybe not verbal so much. I love you. So much. My way to show you that I love you is
through cooking.
Through cooking, all over compensate in cooking. I'll cook you a very lavish Tuesday night meal for no apparent reason, right? And cooking for two sucks, right? It's just not.
It's just
nature's not built that way.
Yeah.
Rabbits are for four.
Yeah.
Ducks are for four.
Yeah.
Chickens are for four.
Yeah.
You know,
A bottle of wine is too much for two people.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
A bottle of wine is, exactly. So
Better for three.
you're there.
Or four.
So, you know, if we're 12, it's fun. I mean, 2 chickens,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
3 pounds of asparagus, 1 bag of onions, 5 pounds of potatoes. It's nicer meal.
You know that at our farm, Dave, and Chris, Modelen, my wife, she cooks for everyone every lunchtime for 20 years. So there's 4 to 8 people at the house at lunch, and then she cooks for everyone year round.
She's a special woman, that one.
Yeah. And it's all simple food, and it's all, she takes 30 minutes to cook it. And it's always good.
Are there any specialties that stick out? Things that are repeated a lot?
It's like beans, but it's always the vegetables. The vegetables that are always
obviously
there. But to say that, big part of us farming was also eating together with the crew, not at night, not in the morning, at lunch, because we're working together. But that's perhaps where you could create something with your own staff. It's like, okay, lunch, mealtime for lunch. It's like,
yeah, and do you think home cooking is something that's too many people are missing out on and is like in kind of threat of?
I understand in some places it's tough, like I have friends that live in New York City, and I just don't see like them enjoying cooking at home. Like, when your apartment's just not great,
Yeah.
Same thing with a lot of friends in London have like small places, and depending, if you have the luxury of space, for cooking at home is wonderful. Also, it's more economical, right? Eating at the restaurant has become, prohibitive almost. Even for me, I'm at a fixed income. Like I run a farm. I calculate my money a little bit more than I used to, and a dinner out at the restaurant could be upwards of $200 real quick, $250 even.
Easy.
And, I can go to a grocery store and do a pretty good job for $150 and eat for a week and a half, for everyone. So,
Yeah, and I feel like home cooking is akin to growing your own food and akin to making. It's just all of it is about taking a direct action in your own vitality and living.
100%. Yeah. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, I have a question actually, but before we go off that topic, because JM had brought up Anthony Bourdain, and I wanted to ask the question, which is, you've said before that the culinary kitchen world is all a bunch of pirates, and with Anthony, you lost your captain. So first, why pirates? Like, why is that the term that's you've kind of chosen there? And then how so was he the captain?
Thanks for that question. So that's an interesting question. I have thoughts on it that are counterintuitive, maybe. At that time, okay, there's been like Gen X versus Gen Z. Okay, we were basically all Gen X cooks, but just a different sensitivity, a different mentality. We were raised differently. We were more aggressive. We were grown. We were taught differently, and that was like a weird clash, a few years ago, right? When Gen Z started coming in and working in Gen X restaurants, we saw problems with that. We saw, we couldn't use the same language we'd been using for years. We couldn't push people, or like the way that we were taught to push people. We couldn't do a whole bunch of different things, which is for the better. I'm appreciative and a fan of the sobriety, morality, empathy, and kindness of Gen Z. I might not agree with everything, right? But I am a fan of my children, my 21-year-old daughter, her friends, the up to, I believe, what right now is it 35-year-old crowd, I would say, is Gen Z. Is it? I might be wrong, whatever.
No, it's millennials.
I find the kids are not self-destructive. Or maybe the education system has changed. I don't know. But this Gen Z, kinder, smarter, gentler, more empathetic. We just and we couldn't keep on working the way we were. We were like, Vikings, kitchen, bro. Let's all get tats. Let's all get tattoos. Let's like drink and like, you know, do all our paychecks up our nose and fight. And, you know, like, come on, you know, It was unsustainable. I didn't even enjoy it while it was going on half the time because I was always a nerd. I always wanted to get back to reading my old cookbooks. I always wanted to get back to like having a peaceful kitchen, you know, where we'd listen to the CBC or VPR and work together on, you know, vegetable projects and butchery, you know, and cake projects, and then have a service, a dinner time service that was trauma-free, right? I loved working in those restaurants where I'd like more nerds, you know, but, you know, in the 80s and 90s, kitchens were like, you know, it was like the Gordon Ramsay screamers and Marco Pierre White screamers, like a lot of the alpha, like the Rene Redzepis and the Ferran Adrias of the 80s and 90s were hard ass people, right? They were just, they'd learned, even in France, they put an end to it, right? In France, the chefs were brutal. They used to hit. I got hit in kitchens in France multiple times, punched in the face, slapped. I got hot oil thrown at me, salt in my eyes. Like the things that were done to me in French kitchens, good God, you know, like incredible. And you know,
it was time for a change.
It was time for a change. I'm happy that it happened. Kitchens should be a safe place to work and with, you know, kind people. And but we can't. Sobriety is a wonderful thing. I went to rehab many years ago, and you know, I spent 4 years sober. Today, I drink a bit of wine with my wife. Normally, you know, I no longer work in a high stress environment like a restaurant. There's not 25 wine agents trying to make me taste their wine every day. All those things. I can simply have wine with dinner, you know, with my wife and be in bed at 8 and not go to a bar, you know, like it's like a normal, you know, wine thing. But only after 4 years of like deprogramming and like, you know, being, you know, getting my stuff together and like living a very simple life, you know, learning how to be normal again.
Yeah,
you know,
it takes a while to do that, but you have to say that it's a special thing to be bogged together. Like I see them here in the kitchen, like they're a special group. They're different. I don't want to say they're like autistic, but they're kind of weird in their own way.
Oh, they all are. All the kitchens are weird still. You know,
they have their codes, and it's like a farming crew, but it's even more bizarre because I guess they're tight. You know, they're in a tight space.
It's tough. It's incredibly tough work. Like, listen, I still, there's mornings that I wake up where I see opportunities like, oh, that space is empty. I should open a restaurant. But then I think about it for 10 minutes. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then I'll be taking out the garbage at 1 a.m. and, you know, and then the staff's not going to show up. And then, you know, like all the bad things that go along with it.
Keep giving me advice about how to run this one, though. That I'll appreciate.
The what, John?
The advice is about this restaurant.
About
how to do it better. Like that's you know, and if I can help on the farm side, we'll do that way.
I actually have another question about these thoughts of opening something. I heard you in 2018 when you and Fred were on Joe Rogan. You were actually talking. It sounded like about the Saint Amand farm for like the very first time, or it was very early on. And I guess it was kind of unclear maybe what it was to become. But at the time, I feel like you were thinking of like, could it be like a small few tables, and it was like when you wanted, like, was there what were you
Yeah,
thinking
sure.
about
I
at the
still think
time?
about that all the time. Like,
Or is it happening with the Airbnb?
I bought
kind of,
50
or?
chairs. I remember Jean Martin's partner here told me about this place where there was
So
chairs.
you bought 50 of them?
I bought them all.
Nice.
Yeah, I have enough chairs right now at the farm to cook dinner for the neighborhood.
And you don't need to have a restaurant. You could just do that. Just do it for the neighborhood.
I know, but there's a part of me that says, do it. And there's a part of me that
Yeah,
says,
of
dude,
course.
just go to bed at 8. You've served enough meals in your
Absolutely.
life. You know, you don't owe anything to anyone. The second you start doing it, you're going to tell yourself, what am I doing? Like, yeah, you know, but you know, when you did something for so long, sometimes you're kind of, you know, you get sucked back in a little bit,
Yeah.
right? But the reality is now that I finally found like somewhat inner peace, you know, I'm sleeping better, you know, I'm not still, you know, waking up thinking I'm in the kitchen and I forgot to order everything. That's like 4 years later. I haven't been in a professional kitchen for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
And I still have traumatic dreams that the restaurant is full and we don't have any food and we didn't order anything and the staff didn't show up and I wake up sweating, freaking out, right?
Yeah.
All the time, right? It's uncontrollable. I can't fix it. Still to this day, right? 4 years later, I still, some nights I spend the whole night working in a horrific service environment where everything goes wrong, where the lights go out, where there's no more gas for the stove. There's, you know, like all of the bad things. They just happen to me 3 times, 4 times a week during my dreams. So, you know, that said, I'd like to do, you know, one dinner this year, but I'd like to do the dinner when the garden is cracking, the vineyard's full of fruit.
Like a pop-up dinner or an event.
I just like to have a pop-up dinner and just not even many people, like 12 or something,
Yeah.
16. Make a beautiful table at the bottom of the vineyard near the garden, near the pond.
Do you do that frequently at all? Like just for friends and like larger groups of friends? Like having
Yeah.
really
We
nice
eat,
dinners
like,
and you,
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure you do, but
Yeah, so a lot of the people who come to the B&B are ex-customers and friends, right? So I end up doing it more often. Sometimes I don't know, I don't look who's staying there, but sometimes I'm like, holy shit! It's last year was Alan Richmond. Alan Richmond's like one of the most famous food writers of all time, right? That guy used to fly around on the Concorde reviewing restaurants, right, for GQ and whatever other publications he wrote for. He was famous for having that giant fight with Bourdain, right? Because he was one of the most powerful food writers in New York for a long time. And he was in, remember when Bourdain was consulting on Treme, the HBO
Treme.
Louisiana documentary? Anyway, Alan Richmond had a cameo in that. So at the Airbnb, there's all of a sudden there's like
He's there.
the most powerful food writer in the world is staying at the Airbnb. So, you know, he's like, oh, and he's older now, you know, and he has cancer and he's a fragile man. So, of course, I go down into the cellar, find, the best bottles of French Burgundy. And I made him a beautiful chicken with morels and yellow wine.
Wow.
And we had dinner outside at the bottom of the vineyard.
Wow.
Sitting in the big chairs, surrounded by chickens. And I don't know if I'll ever see him again because he's old and possibly has a disease like cancer or something. And I was happy to like cook for Alan Richmond one last time at the bottom of the vineyard.
He was probably happy also.
It was just the best Poulet Vin Jaune he'd ever had.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
that's high praise.
That's
you know.
That's nice.
do you feel like you knew at the time why you were buying the farm when you bought it, or was it very unclear and you didn't really know what was going on?
I think I would say that the latter. You know,
Because it was
escapism. It sucks to tell you that, you know, I'm 54 and I can say that it's almost sad, but I'm not sad about it. Like I have no regrets about anything, but like it took me to become 54 to become happy in my life, you know? Even with like, you know, books and success and like, you know, like knowing all these, having wonderful meals all over the world, blah, 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 blah. I was always a fucking miserable person.
But your story of it speaks to a lot of people because it's like a homecoming of sorts. You just return to I guess you could say the basics.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird
way.
because when you analyze it, you're like, fuck, man, it's a long time being unhappy.
Yeah, but you know, it's like the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Or today, it's the same thing.
That's
you know?
a good
It's
one.
like,
You can never forget that saying.
Yeah.
Always useful.
Yeah. but everything with all the good, there's a lot of the bad, right? And just, I don't know. I love today. I love now. I have no regrets about the past, and it's. I'm still in love with cooking. This is a wonderful part of the world.
It is.
This is the last. By the way, this area here, it's the last untouched part of Quebec. I think. Like we barely have gas stations. We don't. I don't think.
Yeah.
We don't have nothing.
We have farms and good food.
We have farms and good food, and
we're very, very
there's
lucky.
good wine, and there's good products, and we haven't had urban sprawl happening. There's no strip malls. There's no Subway hasn't made its way into here or Tim Hortons yet.
Yeah.
And
there's not too much hype. Also, it's still. I don't want to say a secret, but like even this restaurant, we advertise it, but we don't. We want to naturally, attract who needs to be here, and that's for us. That's good enough,
Restaurants are tough though, because as they have to.
They have to bring the money.
They have to break even.
Yeah, for sure.
Like sometimes a country restaurant,
yeah,
like losing money. It's just break even in the country is good enough. Mm-hmm. Pay all your staff, keep the place looking nice. All the fridges working.
We'll make it work, Dave.
Yeah,
we'll make it work. It's the second year that we're doing it. The first year was not perfect, and the second year is going to be good enough. The third year is going to be. We'll get there.
Yeah,
we'll make the change.
There's no change to me. This is busy.
Yeah, the changes are in the economic aspects of it, running by the numbers.
Dave, are there any new projects on the horizon, like books or shows or things like that?
Yeah, I'm actually working on. I have a book coming out. I don't even know the title of it, for God's sake. So before COVID, we sold, me and my friend Stephanie Voyer tagged along with Zev Rovine, a natural wine importer in New York City, basically one of the most important natural wine importers in the USA. And another friend of ours, Xavier Terra, who's a photographer, kind of pitched this book, which is kind of based on the iconic meals of natural wine's first families. So these are not professional cooks. They're professional winemakers, right? But when you travel in France and you go visit these folks, I believe that everybody has this one dish that they're good at producing for 6 to 8 people. I believe you have one, and I believe that you have one, and I believe your wife does it every day for lunch, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to capture that, right? So with Zev's portfolio and other wineries that he doesn't represent, we basically sold pre-COVID the concept of this book to Rizzoli, which I was shocked. Rizzoli's a pretty big imprint to buy such a eclectic weirdo book. But they bought it, and then COVID happened, so we kind of sat on it. And then after COVID, the kids, they went out to Europe and did all the photography of all these dishes and did all the traveling, which was grueling, right? It's like 20 something wineries. You have to spend 2 or 3 days at each, basically eating and drinking. Sounds like like super fun, but it's not fun at all. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Sleeping in like the car maybe, or a tent, or the barn or whatever, stuff like that. So that's on the way, I believe, for the fall or the spring of next year or the fall of this year. I'm not sure, but that's coming out. I don't know the working title yet, but it's a book of recipes. And I had to rewrite all these recipes because these guys are not professional cooks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like weird, like
nice
things that doesn't make sense. But I have to leave it in. I have to work around it because I can't change these recipes to my recipes, right? So we'll see how it works. But I tested a lot, like most of them, and everything seems okay. But it's going to be an interesting book for natural wine fans. That's a cool thing.
Super cool.
Also, pre-COVID, I'd written a treatment with Steph again for what was it called? World's Oldest Bars and Restaurants. Because I like just Netflix. I like Netflix and I like all that stuff. And I'm like, they rarely appeal to my sense of history, right? Like I could just watch like Roman Empire documentaries like every day, right? But they don't produce them, and Egypt stuff, and right. And I am fascinated through my life. I've been fascinated with like forever restaurants, right? That have not gone to tourist hell.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of them that have, but there's some that haven't. So I sold that concept, and then we had COVID, and then the company that bought the rights to that show basically started doing shows for the Canadian government with federal money that were based, I don't know, on other things. Anyway, so now that show is being retooled. Old friends of mine that did, Montreal guys. Hey, remember the movie Hang the DJ? So there's these twins, the Lavilla brothers. They're the producers. I think they worked for Scorsese or something for a while. I don't know. They've done a whole bunch of stuff. They did a documentary on Juventus. They just did a documentary on the famous photographer Tony Vaccaro. They've done all kinds of really interesting projects, and somebody should actually make a documentary on them. They're so interesting. But we kind of have this friendship, and they kind of asked me what's going on, and I said, nothing much. They wanted to do a documentary on the farm like 2 years ago, and I was just like, I'm not. I'm making my way with stepping out of like the public view, which I'm happy with, right? And I kind of told them I got wind of my show is back. I got this. I wrote it. Let me send it to you. You can read it, see if you like it. I think it has to be rewritten because it's 2 years old. And they took a look at it, and now we're in process of getting it done.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're
Kind of show I'd want to watch.
It's kind of neat. Yeah. I was hoping that I didn't have to do it. Right. We could like find some cool
But they want
Gen Z kid,
Because all that traveling that it would require, that's not a fantasy for you. That's hard work.
It is actually like, because I don't particularly, want to go to the oldest restaurant in Madrid that much.
Yeah, you want to wake up, have your coffee, and look at chickens.
Right. Yeah. But for the sake of, I'm also on a fixed income and haven't had a job in 4 years except for the farm. So, I kind of have to eventually figure out that I need to do something from November to May. I would work doing something from November to May. Like, so right now I've been entertaining, like working at the hospital as an orderly, working at the Home Depot, working at the fruits and vegetables section of a grocery store, which I started doing when I was a kid, which I loved, which I seem to be the happiest doing. And not going back into restaurants. So we'll see if this show goes for it. Maybe I'll do that. But I am fascinated by working at the Home Depot still to this day. I think I would be really good at it.
There are, and especially like retirees that just go and do that for fun.
They're so great at it too.
So many times.
They're really helpful.
By the way, I have a personal question, which is, do you have a long distance trains to recommend to go on?
I'm not Fred was always the train guy, but I just sent the French government put out last week that link for the students on France. Did you see that?
No.
I think it's like $300. You can take the train wherever you want, all over Europe for the whole summer. Wow. All over France, sorry, just through France.
Yeah.
So as long as you have a valid student card.
From anywhere?
Anywhere in France.
No, but you don't need to be French.
You have to be a French passport holder, which my kids are.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can do whatever they want there. I'm fascinated still to this day from the Toronto, BC one.
Yeah, I hear that's really nice.
Yeah, I like Via. It's cool.
Yeah.
Like, the sleeper cabins are good.
It's 5 days though. It's a big
Have you seen Viking cruises though, to get away from trains for a second? Have you seen these Viking cruises?
I don't think so.
So check out their website. They've got these we see them in Europe sometimes in the rivers, like in the Moselle and things like that. It's like these tiny cruise ships. They're really
They I feel like they advertise to old people basically. Even though to me I'm like, that looks more interesting.
But not
than
the big cruises.
No, they're
ones.
tiny little boats, but they go through the rivers of Europe.
Yeah, I've seen the ads. Yeah,
and they look great. And then the
old.
dining looks like solid dining rooms, solid quarters, and the boats are low to the water, so I think every room has really good view.
It's more old school. It's less of the carnival modernity.
Yeah. There's also that the Orient Express is back, but I believe it's prohibitively
Expensive.
Like it looks like
Yeah.
for Louis Vuitton wearing influencers only,
Yeah.
and Patek Philippe watch wearing
No.
guys. Like it looks like it's beautiful to look at the images of the
It's-
new Orient Express. I
the
also think the food is
The Instagram.
being cooked by a 3 Michelin star chef and so on.
Yeah, it's too bad because I see in old movies the long distance train riding just looks like such a.
Yeah. Classy way of going.
There's just such a something about it.
Burlington, New York is not a bad one.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Burlington, New York, you can just drive to the station.
Not an overnight thing, but it's still many
8 hours.
Yeah, it's a long.
Takes the
You
same
can
thing
eat-
to drive.
You can eat on it. Or?
I don't know if you can eat.
Okay.
Probably not. But
There's-
you can.
there's just
I'm a
nice-
picnic basket guy. I actually just bought a picnic basket, like a real one.
Yeah.
You know,
We have picnics here.
but a real picnic basket there with the flaps that open.
Yeah.
yeah. You can. They have some cool setups on Amazon.
Yeah.
Classic. Rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Just some quick
We're
questions of
finishing up
random
here.
nature.
We're running.
What's a book that you've read many times or that you give to people many times?
The History of Food by McMillan Toussaint Sama. I believe you can't. It's the most important, but like I've based everything on it, right?
Did you read that really early on?
I read it early on. I've gifted it 40 times. Yeah, and then all of Robert Hughes, his selective essays on art. Robert Hughes was an influential art critic.
Of what era?
I'd say that, 60s, 70s, 80s. He wrote a book on Goya. He's written books about the Fatal Shore. It was one of his most fatal. I think one of the great Robert Hughes books is The Fatal Shore, which is a book about the history of the emptying out of the jails of London and bringing the prisoners and unwanted people, unwashed people of London to New South Wales and Australia. So the migration of the unwanted people of London to New South Wales. It's like a historical epic, but I think a lot of things went wrong on that.
Yeah.
Cannibalism.
Not surprised.
Yeah, a lot of things, but also all these Europeans that had always lived in a city all of a sudden are on a giant continent full of different animals and bugs that will kill you. It's an interesting historical read. Wow. But first and foremost, McMillan Toussaint Sama, History of Food, and then maybe any Robert Hughes book, but Fatal Shore.
You've convinced me.
Me too. Me too. I want to read it.
What advice did you hear when you were really young that you only appreciated a lot later in life?
Always, my mother used to say, always work like you're the owner of the place you're working at. No matter if it's a gas station, a dépanneur, a restaurant, a farm. And I don't know why that stuck. She said so much stuff to me that didn't stick, but that stuck. So when I work for you, I work as you, right?
Yeah.
I take care. If I work in your restaurant, I take care of your restaurant like it was my own, right? I believe your what you want to achieve in your business, I also want to achieve it for you and for myself. And there's no limit to that. If you're going to pump gas, be the best at pumping gas. If you're going to wash dishes, be very good at washing dishes, right? If you're going to be a waiter, be a great fucking waiter and wait on people like you own the restaurant, right? I cooked in many restaurants I didn't own, right? But I always cooked in them like I owned them. And I got angry when things didn't go my way as the fictional owner of the restaurant,
Yeah.
Yeah. What culinary experience from childhood really sticks out to you in your memory, if any?
My grandmother used to make toast, but I don't to this day, and I've tried to do it 100 times, and I don't understand how she did it. But she used to take grocery store sliced bread. She would toast the bread slices in the toaster. Then she would butter them. Then she would put them in the oven for, I don't know for how long, for maybe 2 minutes. I don't know. But I've been able to recreate everything that I've ever tasted to trial and error, decipher and get there. But I can't decipher how my grandmother made toast and why they went in the toaster, they were buttered, and then they went in the oven, and why they tasted the way that they did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been like elusive.
That's really cool.
That's your final mission to figure the toast out. And what's the best difficult decision you ever made?
I feel leaving the restaurant business, like leaving Joe Beef. How many restaurants did I have at that time? Because I had people tell me, "You're insane. Don't do that."
And your whole life.
I was just like
driving to that point, right?
Yeah, but I was just like, no, I'm done. Like I believed it in my guts, I'm content. I'm content that they're thriving. I am content that they're thriving.
Yeah. It
was traumatic for everybody, a little bit. I'm content they're thriving. I'm content I'm thriving, but it did cause me stress and anxiety, and I did question myself for a long time,
Of course.
Afterwards, But it's only recently when I became comfortable in viticulture, comfortable at the farm, comfortable, I just got a better dad. And ultimately, when I became a better dad, I had to leave the restaurant to become the dad I wanted to be, right? To speak to my children, not in the way the chef speaks to 140 employees, but to deprogram myself and become I had these fantasies of becoming the guy next door, the guy who just worked at the post office his whole life, that drives a little Honda Civic and eats hamburger steak once a week, and has fish on Fridays.
As a pickup.
It's normal guy, I just always wanted to be that, right? Have eggs and sausage and and read the newspaper, and speak to my children gently, and so that happened, right?
Beautiful.
It's weird. Does that sound weird?
No,
Does that
it's
sound
not. It's like no.
Just for the record, I wasn't speaking to my children in a different way. But
It's like when you're. I know how it is.
when I wake up and I have when you have 5 restaurants, 140 employees at that time, and then COVID, and there's a whole bunch of. You're just not gentle.
Yeah.
And the gentling of me.
Yeah.
Is a bigger deal than I wanted it. It was elusive. The hardest work I had to do on myself was the gentling of myself. Mm-hmm. Is that weird to say?
We had a grower, a farmer here, come and say that her best advice that she got was, never trust a farmer not to exploit you because he's exploiting himself.
That's smart. Yeah,
and it's deep. Kind of probably in the restaurant business.
You could say that about the restaurant business.
It's kind of the same,
That's very, very true. Because a lot of people exploit themselves.
Listen, how many kids did I graduate that are doing so well? How many chefs came through those kitchens that are all doing well? Mm-hmm. But you know what? I feel I bet they all feel that they were exploited by me, and I feel I feel I exploited them. 100%. But I was doing the best that I could at the time with the knowledge and education and skill set that I had, and the training. The training that I received was I was being exploited as well.
Yeah.
So I was trained to do the same, right?
These line of works, farming is the same. My 20-year-old, worked on the crew with me for 5 years, and it's we're all about efficiency. We're all about business. We're all about, come on, let's go. And, there's many opportunities that I could have had to listen to what he was thinking about, caring about. It was okay, come on, let's do it. What's the plan for today? Let's make it happen. And it's that.
Is he still farming?
No, he wants to be a banker. So
exactly though,
You know?
isn't that the point,
yeah,
right?
well,
you know,
but that's okay that we have
you
a good
scared him out of
relationship.
it,
Yeah,
which
but
is kind of, I bet.
But that's what the work requires. You know, if you want to be successful in farming, you need to, at least what I was doing, running a crew of 10 and just making it happen. It's like, it was all business.
One of my regrets in the restaurant business was always that. It was like, why did we capitalize on it? Like that's, you know, that was like, you know, we let you go from doing like $5,000 a day in sales. And then next thing you know, like we're trying to do $10,000 a day in sales. And then we're trying to do $12,000 a day in sales. And then we're like looking at the sales globally for the week. And then it's we're like, oh, we did 80. That's really good. Hopefully we can do 90 next week. And I said, that's kind of where things you know, imagine we just said, no, we're just going to do $5,000 a day forever.
Or 10,000 and work less.
Right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's
the anti-capitalization of it,
that's
perhaps. But of course, you have partners, and you know everybody's got different parameters, and the waiters want to make as much as they can, this and that. So it's not only you know, driving the boat, right? You have to listen to everybody else at the table because we're all like rowing the boat together. But
but one thing for sure, the wake is not driving the boat. That's for sure, and that's where we always need to be doing a check-in with ourselves, like, okay, where am I at? Where am I going? Because if the wake drives the boat, then I think we'll leave it at that. It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you both. A pleasure to see you again.
Yeah.
I'll see you.
Yeah, well,
I'll see you a bunch of times this summer. Great to meet you.
Yeah, you too, Dave.
Love to have you over at the farm anytime.
Yeah, I've driven past a number of times.
Maybe I can make you a couple of Bresson chicks in the incubator, so you can have your own. Your own
Actually,
Bressons.
yeah, or if you want to trade some, because we're going to do some more batches with other people's rooster with their eggs to try to get variety.
You know who's got the best rooster on closing? I know we're closing this down.
No, it's
but
fine.
did you ever see Big Fred's rooster at
No, I
South
haven't.
I'll send you a picture after the podcast. That's like, I'm dying to breed that rooster.
What breed is?
I don't even know. I don't think they know. I'll show you the picture. He's just the most majestic, muscular, looks like a Mr. Olympia bodybuilder. Just a beast and proud and chill.
Nice.
Great rooster.
Screw you, Hawks. I'm here.
All right, so that's it for this week, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk. We certainly did. And tune in next time to the Market Gardener podcast. I hope you guys are all growing. I hope everything's well.
Yeah, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast, download the episode. Those things really help us out.
All right, see you then. See you next week, guys. Jam out.
Thank you.
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. You can check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.